Welcome to the pre-Sabbath march. Yours truly. Got that backpack. I got some donations, some sauce for spaghetti in the fridge, in the community fridge, not far from here, about 44, almost 45 meters in the back. And got it in the backpack, so I added on the backpack a little bit of that weight as we go into the mountain. And was a bit moody, but cleaned my room, did some email work, did some my YouTube channel work, and here I am today. You gotta commence with gratitude. I got 20 seconds. Turn your heads left or right before you cross the street, regardless, because you never know, the brakes might malfunction. The citizen driver might press the accelerator instead of the brake, and that might be a problem one can encounter potentially when crossing the street. And it's always good to double check, you know. Montreal downtown, HAWK, Hawk Island, Montreal. We're not really close to downtown, but a few miles from downtown, and that kind of looks like a downtown building, but we're not really downtown. We're in NDG, Notre Dame de Grace, NDG, my new neighborhood, which is part of NDG, Côte de Neige, Citoyen, you know, Côte de Neige, and that's something where we have, of course, appel. We have, of course, to call out, I guess, because it's really an island, you know. In many ways, it's just a big island, and we're separated into boroughs, but it's a 2.5 million metropolis, and that's something which, of course, we have to see and we have to know and we have to fully understand. And that this big island is a beautiful island, very diverse, and it's surrounded by a big river here. And it's like a small country in many ways, 2.5 million people, my home in this life and in another life. And from as far as I can remember, you know, I think last time that I went out from the island was years and years ago. For sure, I haven't been out of the island since COVID. That's February 2020 already, more than 5 years since I survived COVID. So, gotta begin this journey, I guess, with gratitude, grateful, thankful. My rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, and phone bill's paid. And you know, we got 4 more days until September 1st, so I gotta have to rock and roll with that, because that's gonna add on the bills. You know, you gotta pay those bills, and always rent paid, always, of course, thereafter electricity, and always the electricity and the sun shining. And I'm gonna check. I'm curious about the box here. Somebody had wasted some food. I guess it was left there. Please don't leave it there. You gotta put this in the trash, because a child might take it and might swallow a bone, you know. If a child takes it, comes playing, and swallows a bone, is an added risk, you know. Just gotta think about that. I was just curious if there's somebody had left just like that the food, you know, but it's just bones, I guess, you know. Sometimes you just gotta bone it up. I guess you ate it to the bone, but be careful, because, you know, you gotta be conscientious and things of the public nature. If somebody, you know, swallows a bone like that, see, you can swallow a bone. Not to be overly preoccupied with, you know, extreme security and safety, but at a certain point in the public, you know, public safety, public security is a citizen endeavor. But a little child might have swallowed that bone there, so just put it in the trash, put it in the garbage. Actually, this goes in the compost, but there's no compost here really for me to put it in the compost. So, and turn your heads left or right when you cross the street. And yeah, I was just thinking of the eventuality, and because if I wouldn't have saw the bones, I would have just left it or took it for the recycling. But since it has bones, I'm gonna have to drop it in right here. So yeah, think about that, you know. Imagine a child would have swallowed that, you know, just played around, went there, took it up, and swallowed the bone, whatever. It's possibilities, you know, in the public. Just like in my last video, you see that I find the shard objects, which I remove and I throw to the trash, because, you know, they're shards, and for the children, the children can put their hands and play with it. And, you know, it's like a few weeks ago in one of my videos, you see that there was a knife, and so for a room, and I didn't have gloves, and I warned the fellows, I said my family cousins or auntie, she was, you know, in that type of level. So I guess you got enough of my face, got enough of my face. Rock and roll 24/7 for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, truckers, pre-workout special. Go Aspies, go for the Aspies, fellow Aspies, and the butchers, the truckers, the public workers, the train conductors, those in the daycares who changed some diapers today. I guess that daycare now is on the go and getting a little bit of that changing diapers, all across the North American Collective. And I almost lost my rainbow hat. Bought it for $3 at a second hand, or less than that, something like that. And auctioning the pants and the underwear, auctioning everything that I have in my possession. 93%, and that's just something I gotta do myself, because my only stress now is really financial. I'm always open for business as I go for a special for my fellow Aspies. 50% of the Aspie population, the people like myself who live with this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, which is not a mental illness. And I gotta give a shout out because this is what I love. And you bring me paint, I'll do volunteering to paint all the benches in Montreal and beyond like this color. Just bring me the tools and the permission, and this is what I like. Like this one needs to be painted, and that one needs to be painted. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 here that needs to be painted. And paint is something nice color like that. I always love the embellishments of the Publik, it's something which I love, the colorfulness. So you gotta paint those on the Montreal Mount Royal here, to put some labor and do a little paint and do a little bit of arbeit, a little bit of that work, travail, like we say here in that French, was in la belle province. And that one's a beautiful graffiti there. See? I know who did it, but it's actually really, really nice. It's been there for at least 7, 8, 9 years. 10 maybe. Maybe 10. I gotta ask my friend, or maybe sometimes it's marked there below. I gotta go check next time. Yeah, we got some nice pieces of art like that. Some people are really talented with their graffiti art. They can really rock and roll a lot. And here we go, of course, towards the mountain. We're going east from the west, and then we're gonna come back west. Always for the truckers, firefighters, plumbers, butchers, nurses, and electricians, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, All of those, of course, on the go now, and across the 63, across the 63, such as the bus drivers, with the bus driving the transportation, the transportation, of course, where we go. And it's always gratitude, it's always geopolitics, it's always sports, fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport, and it's always rock and roll with me. That's my holy trinity. And I thought I was gonna leave at 3, but there were so many geopolitical events unfolding, and now I gotta give a special alarm with the Venezuela situation. It's alarming. I guess there's a potential conflict starting in Venezuela, an intervention, military intervention. And of course, if that's the case, if that's the case, of course, then we have, of course, the intervention where we have to go and we have to appellate, The intervention is, of course, that we have, of course, to do. And, of course, we have to appellate and, of course, integrate in all, of course, the situational aspects where we have to get going with that. And that's how we have, of course, to understand fully when we are, of course, in the domain in all the life-affirming values. And I got plenty of seconds to cross, but double check always. See those 4 seconds? Got 4. Said I got plenty of time to cross. 4 seconds. Plenty of times to cross, and I'm pretty joyous. But my only stress now is financial. This market opened up here, and if I make $1 million or $2 in a bin, I'm gonna give 50% to my anonymous friend, and that's just how we're gonna rock and roll with that. And always good, always loving. A little bit of good loving is always good for me to see people holding hands and kissing, hugging, and loving a little bit. It's not all about the money. And you want to come LOV with me and play that black and white on rainbow, you got to be 18 plus though. Be 18 plus. If you're 18 plus, then we can rock and roll. We can tango. But I'm gonna card you just like when you go, of course, buying some. Here in Montreal, across Canada, coast to coast actually, we legalized that cannabis. Here I came a few times with my anonymous friend. This one, well, I'm surprised it closed. Has some good deals on some noodles, which of course purchased before, but of course there was this special on some noodles, like noodle packs. I remember buying during COVID a few noodle packs. We might have closed just recently, maybe a few days, few weeks, few months ago maybe. But something like that. So of course that is, of course, the characteristics which we have, of course, in the population of the size, of course, where we are, of course, to understand fully that the businesses, some businesses are closing, some businesses are opening, and there's a lot of tough economic financial problems now. And it certainly is my financial stress, myself included. But besides that, I am pretty good, especially when I go work out, train, exercise, and I go to the second my second home. I guess my mistress, my doctor, mistress, doctress, Dr. Mountain Mount Royal. There, I always love to go, and I always love, of course, to be on the loving side of all that, the wellness and, of course, of nature, and where we are, of course, on that nature on the side is something, of course, where I have to. It's quite part of my ritual routines. You know, Aspies, we have ritual routines, and these ritual routines kind of preoccupy most of my time, and just Aspies in general, we can be very strange, weird, and I guess I always include dedication to my fellow Aspies and, LGBTQ community and all that, and of course all the situations where we have, of course, as we live together in Concordiate. And look at that beautiful, isn't that beautiful, kind of how it popped out. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about Asperger's, and of course we're going to delve into geopolitics, because that's my domain, and that is what I love. And it's really a love, man. It's really a love in a sense. It's not necessarily a love in the traditional sense. It's an Aspie love, and it's called a special interest, and that's where pretty much I excel at in theorizing geopolitics. I'm an independent geopolitical analyst, theorist, philosopher, thinker, and strategist. Of course, my strategies are for the North American Collective, NORAD, NATO complex, as of course I discuss my DMAA, direct military assistance or action philosophy, which is a real one, and of course it's required to be fully understood because it's for today and for tomorrow, and of course it has reverberations from the past, and of course those reverberations from the past requires a little bit of understanding of the historical development of NATO. So it has to do with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, for NATO, for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, especially the NATO complex. So it's relegated to NATO, to the sphere of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So this is of course relegated to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It has to be specific and centric to the NATO sphere, although the NATO in relation to the world. So of course I'm going to discuss it. I'm going to of course discuss so much. I'm just going to give a shout out how nice they are. I see there's a few of them that need to be painted, but this is what I really love. When I see colorful, that turquoise and that red is my favorite color, but these need to be painted. So just painting them a little bit would be really nice, and I wish of course to get a little bit of paint and just some brains and muscle, and that's beautiful embellishment of the city, or some pink, some red, some yellow, just nice fluorescent there colors. See, those are really nice. Oh yeah, all across our empire we need of course to embellish of course the categories of course of the embellishments of the 63, always for the 10, the 50 and the 3, and always of course for the dialogue where we are of course now, because it's ongoing resolution of course of action. So it requires of course the action and the situational awareness of course where we are, the point in time where we are, where I predicted that we're going to be in a general manner. So this is of course important of course to the momentum at hand of where we are of course, and where we situate ourselves in all the general positions where we are, that I predicted what's happening now. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. In 2019 I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. So I'm going to delve deeper into that as we go, step by step, and step by step as we go, my own healing in many ways, having healing, suffered struggle, been depressed, been suicidal. I'm actually celebrating. It's a celebration, salutation to my fellow Aspies. 50% of Aspies are not diagnosed. I'm not officially diagnosed, but I've been diagnosed by several individuals over the past, since about 8-9 years, who have experience in the healthcare system. But of course I don't have a family doctor. I'm still waiting for one. It's been 4 years I'm waiting, but of course I have Asperger's. It's clear, and I just don't want to accept it for, I've been told by several individual citizens who have experience in the healthcare system, and of course who have diagnosed me with Asperger's. Say, you have Asperger's. I always wanted to refuse it. I refused it. I refused wanting to wear the label. So this label and this stigma, of course, because there's a stigma attached to it, right? There's a certain stigma. I'm going to cross the streets because I want to be in the sun. So I want to be in the sun. So of course this difference, we're different, right? We see the world differently. That's where Aspen is like, and we of course see the world different, and that is of course the situation where we are of course to get it on the go. And now, so this awareness of this difference, I I was diagnosed by people who have experience in the healthcare system, right? By several citizens. And of course, I never wanted to accept it because it's like a stigma. You know, you're diagnosed, you say, well, there's a label, you know, it's an autistic label, of course, as Asperger's. We view the world differently, and we have certain difficulties when it comes to the social aspects. So us in the social aspects, I give you a characteristic. So Aspies would focus on certain numbers, of course, certain traits on the bus, certain traits of the bus there. For example, the number 37044. So see, that's not the number of the bus. The number of the bus is 105. But there's another number, 37044. See? 37044. So that number signifies maybe a classification of the relation of this bus to the whole complex, of course, of the STM, the Société de Transport de Montréal. You know, so that is, of course, just where we are organizationally. But that number, of course, sometimes we have to be, of course, in the situation, of course, where we are with the numbers. We might look at numbers or details, writings, where I've been checking for the as long as I can remember. Oh yeah, I love seeing that. That gives me hope. People holding hands. Yeah, people holding hands, that gives me hope. So, of course, that situational awareness is, of course, something that we have, of course, to understand fully and to be, of course, operationally about it. And, of course, to confluence and, of course, totally be aware of all the dictums where we are. Now, of course, in the characteristics where we are, to be fully, of course, involved with our differences and then working on these characteristics, you know, on these characteristics. Because these characteristics make us strange, bizarre, and odd, you know, make us strange, bizarre, and odd. Make us strange, bizarre, and odd. So this strangeness, this bizarreness, this weirdness, this oddities are interplaying because we lack, our brain have differences, right? And of course, due to these differences, we see the world differently. So we might focus on certain details. The way we interact, we communicate with fellow citizens, individual might be very, 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 very different. And a neurotypical, which you are, the majority of the population, you are neurotypical, so they're 99.56%. But keep in mind that Aspies, we're a tiny small community, and it's not a mental illness, but half of Aspies are not diagnosed officially. So the official number of Aspies in the world is 0.4 in North America. The North American Collective in North America is 0.44. You know, 0.44. So that 0.44 double is 0.88. So it's not even close to 1, not even 1%. So you can imagine how tiny our community is. You know, it's a rare condition. A lot of people don't even know what it is, and it's not an illness. I'm just gonna, of course, stop a little bit. You know, when I pass by the car here, where we gotta have a little bit of that awareness that in the public and my backpack, you know, my backpack is big, and my clumsiness, I have to always take a little bit of a step so that the citizens with families and with small children, you know, so I don't impede in their safety and security, and the way I traverse a little bit on the marching steps as I go to the mountain. That's why when you see usually family with children, or if the child is at top of the fellow uncle, auntie, my great family here at the North American Collective, then I take a step back, you know, because I have the big backpack, and being wide-breasted and having a little bit of clumsiness, it's always good for my security and the individual security and the collective, of course, to make that assessment. So now I'm gonna just go a little bit on Asperger's. I want to say that today I'm grateful. I'm actually celebrating. It's 8 years since I crossed Canada coast to coast. I got the tickets. 8 years since I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2018, and I crossed Canada. And that event made me come out of my depression and my suicidalness. And I gotta give a shout out to the public workers, because I love the embellishments such as these beautiful yellow flowers is always something which I love imprudentious, and something which Civilizationes, Draconis, Imperius, Publicus will mass finances. So that is just a beauty there. So Asperger's, we have to begin, because a lot of people make the mistake. A lot of Asperger's begin and say, of course, that. Of course, a lot of Asperger's are deemed as having an illness, and yet, but in certain ways, we have a there's a deficit, there's a discord, I don't like to use the word disability. Let's say just that we are less able. It's social communication, the way we communicate, and in special interest. So this, if I would have some money, I would definitely finance. It reminds me of a past lives, previous incarnations, when I was born in ancient Egypt. As you can see, it has ancient Egyptian motifs, and I lived many past lives, many incarnations. I was born in the USA twice, as a man, once as a woman, 3 times total post 70-76, and even here on the island of Montreal. As a woman, I lived between 1688 and 1735, and I served in the RCMP before it was known as the RCMP, which is our equivalent of the FBI and Mounties, and I even served a bit in the SPVM when I met Louis Cyr, the strong man here in Quebec, and I lived as a man, as a woman in past lives incarnation. I was the priestess who orated the great Rithria to Lycurgus. I was the priestess who orated the great Rithria to Lycurgus. Priestess Pythia, who orated the great Rithria to Lycurgus. So many past lives, many incarnations, that is something which we have to be like that, and that is something which we gotta go, and that is something which we gotta get doing with that, and that is something which we gotta get on that loving, and that is something which we have, of course, to be, and we gotta get waiting here in the sun, and that is something which we gotta get doing with that, and that's always something what I gotta wait for the lights. And I'm happy to see people joyous, and joy is important. Fitness activity is important, and understanding that we actually have to work to build the bridges, right? Because bridges have to be built between Aspies and non-Aspies, or I don't like to use the word non-Aspie, right? Because you have our strengths, we have our strengths, we have our weaknesses, neurotypicals, right? Neurotypical. So we have to build small bridges, big bridges, medium-sized bridges, or extra large. It's just like when you order a coffee. You might order a coffee or fries in a fast food. You could order small fries, medium fries, large fries, or extra large fries, right? So those different types of sizes of fries that you order, it depends maybe on certain days or with certain people how you feel. You might order Monday, you might order the large one, and then Tuesday you might order the extra large, and Wednesday the medium or the small, or XYZ, etc. So it has a variance. So thus the variance of building bridges varies the size of the bridges, because sometimes the bridges can be smaller, right? It depends on the individual, but we have to build them, because I don't have antagonistic feelings. I don't have resentful feelings concerning the neurotypicals. I don't have that, right? I don't have antagonistic feelings. I don't have antagonistic feelings, and I don't have resentful feelings. So I have to build those bridges. But due to our Aspie, we don't have symptoms. We have characteristics, we have traits. Due to these traits and characteristics, it has been a difficult journey. And for Aspies, a lot of Aspies suffer. For example, me, I was depressed and suicidal. Call my memory, if you ask me, my life prior to spring 2014, and I know I lived a few kilometers that way, and it was a small underground basement, like a tight, small prison cell I didn't even have a kitchen. The kitchen was integrated in my room, and a small bathroom. I didn't even have a bathtub. Thank Goddess, Dedie says, God, that I have one now. I can substitute for not being able to afford a massage therapy session, which I wish I would. Anybody wants to volunteer, or friends with benefits only, don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. Rock and roll, dancing, geopolitics. You want to get work in those, or support the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which is manifesting as a public-private partnership called to all willingly living across Canada, United States, for the mass Imperial Republican Democratic Republic foundation of the fusion of thereof. So, which we're going to discuss, and I have discussed for years and years and years now. So, consequently, Asperger's has its problems, right? High depression and suicidal rates. I was there for a few years, and my life is a blackout. Before 2014, spring 2014, I have trouble remembering my personal life before that. But besides that, I have a very good memory. But with retrograde amnesia, you kind of lose personal memories, but you don't lose mathematical knowledge, which I guess I'm pretty okay. I'm pretty okay with math. I actually don't mind doing mathematics, especially percentages and fractions. I could do it for hours and hours and hours, calculating percentiles and percentages, mathematics like that. I'm not an expert. I'm not, of course, the expert of that, but nonetheless. So that is, of course, how we rock and roll. And of course, now my brain switches since I see these trucks. Now we just discuss percentages. See, our brain is different. So now I try to calculate how many trucks are in Montreal in an estimated manner and how many are carrying butter, bread, cheese, bacon. And there's a percentage of them that are carrying XYZ elements, and they're integral to our North American collective continuity of civilizational security. And I know that they're heading the border with the United States is that way. They're heading south and they're heading north. So now the camera is pointing north, now the camera is pointing south. So now at this point in time, all across Canada and the United States, some are crossing the border, some are coming in with potatoes, with bacon, some are going in due to the unnecessary and of course trade war, which is a mistake. Granddaddy Trump, it's a dragon versus Trump since 2018 when Donald Trump made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. So I've been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border, as I have for many years now, since 2018. Because Granddaddy Trump, that was a mistake. I'm going to get into it, and the geopolitical sphere and analysis of course, that we got, of course, getting on that go with that, and that is something with, of course, I got to get on that loving rock and roll to get now the dimensions of where we are, of course, to dwell in geopolitics, and the dwelling in geopolitical theory and thinking is, of course, something which I got to be manifesting, that these are beautiful there. What a beautiful flower. So now there's trucks, and truckers all across the highway, there's hundreds and thousands of trucks. And when you break it down in percentages, a percentage of those trucks might carry bacon. In terms of, but then we have to go by weight, right? We can also go by the value. So this is the good thing, the majesty of economic mathematics, financial mathematics. So we can transpose it in two different ways. How much of the trucks are carrying bacon in percentage of the total value of this point in time? But of course, every hour there's trucks reaching their destination or commencing their destination, because some trucks arrive now at their destination, their final destination. Some trucks are beginning their journey, maybe somewhere in Texas, California, New Mexico, Colorado, Ohio, or from Canada to the US, or vice versa, right? And we have the trade. So we can go into percentages. So we can split it in percentages. Right? So that's a calculation. Of course, it could be AI as well, but you can train your brain as well and work with me a bit on this one, just to show how the ASPE brains are different. So now there might be some bacon, some eggs, some bread, and we can calculate the percentage of the total value. Let's say now, across the 63 of our coming empire, let it be, there's a total value of, let's say, $44 billion. In circulation. I'm not discussing the ones that have arrived at their destination. So in circulation. So there might be a value. Out of that, if out of those 44 billion, if 4 billion is bacon, then that signifies 144 divided by 4 is 11th. So that's not 10%. So it's like more like 8.9%, so percentages. So this is mathematics, and that's when I cross the highways, that's how my ASPE brain starts to meditate and think about it, or those, how much is that weight? So for example, I'll give you an example of how Asperger brain works. So if I am to count those, my, of course, brain would count the value of that in monetary value. So let's say you paid $3 for that. If you paid $3 for that in percentage, and that's 1/3. That means that you have to divide it by 3. So maybe you lost $1 value. So that's just how our brain works, It's just the difference of our brain. Our brains are different. So you might just see pieces of melon, right? So you see, it's just melon on the ground, but my brain automatically goes to this mathematical percentages. Yeah, right? So it's a difference. We're different. ASPEs, we're different, and some people pick on that right away in the workplace or in other situations, or it takes some time, it takes a few hours or usually a few days, and then you kind of know that there's something different. And this difference is not negative, it's not evil, it's not bad, it's not antagonistic, it's not a disease, We're different, right? But I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend who gifted me, of course, 2 books autism, which of course include Asperger's, that is something which we have to get doing with that, and that is just something which of course we have to understand. So this Asperger's has been merged with autism in 2014, 2013, 2014. So this merger has occurred, but I still use Asperger's or HFA. So the fact and the characteristic is of this difference, right? This difference comes in our brain having these mutations at the microscopic level. They're not protruding outside of the brain, so you cannot visibly see them, right? There's not a visibility outside of the protruding outside of the brain. They're internal. So they're internal. Inside at interior, the microscopic level, think about nanoparticles or microscopic level, microchips, transistors, So microchips and transistors, those are the situational awareness where we are, of course, to conclude that now, of course, the love side of things where we are to understand and create bridges, right? Because we have to build bridges, because Aspies, we have three main problems which affect Aspies in the gross part of the world. So here, I guess we can get close. Because you can't, this is a one way. Yeah, it's a one way. So in theory we could cross here. I guess so. We kind of better to wait, but you can cross, maybe wait, maybe cross, or whatever the case may be, and whatever, of course, the situational awareness is. Yeah, just wait, I guess, because even if it's a one way and blocked, it's better to wait, I guess, for safety. So this difference makes us also open to potential vulnerabilities. That's cool. And I gotta give a shout out specifically for a book which was rented 4 times, which was rented 4 times to me, which is rented 4 times, So this rental 4 times, and that's just what it is, and that's what it is. So it was rented because, of course, it was rented to me 4 times. Because it was a library loan, of course, and because of this library loan, of course, I don't have possession of it anymore, because it was a library loan. But appreciating Asperger's syndrome, appreciating Asperger's syndrome is a book which I strongly recommend. It learned me, of course, learn myself how Aspies were different, and also these vulnerabilities to learn to detect that this difference can open up of vulnerabilities that we're not even aware of because of this difference. Right, so because of this difference is something where we have, of course, to consequently work prudently about it and work prudently to understand fully how to operate and navigate the neurotypical world. For example, in the workspace, things, of course, such as gossip, we wouldn't understand, In the gossip, we wouldn't understand. So that is something which, of course, is valuable and in contribution, of course, to all the dictums where we are, of course, consequently, and of course, being appellative about that we are at that point in the domain where, of course, we are different, and this different, of course, has its blessings and has its curses, and has 3 main problems. 3 main problems. So now I'm going to address the problems, but again, they're not symptoms, there's characteristics. There's not symptoms, there's characteristics, They're not symptoms, they're characteristics. So they're not symptoms, they are characteristics, right? There's not symptoms, there's not character. Because it's not a disease, so of course they are, of course, on the appellation where we have to be, So they're not symptoms, they're characteristics. And these characteristics, traits, as well, manifest themselves in a certain way, which can, of course, cause certain discomfort, and certain, of course, level of not feeling safe, or certain questions or certain manners in which the perception is. And of course, I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, I lived, of course, being attacked by surprise a few years ago, But I don't know, I have to go to the Jewish General Hospital, of course, to see, and that is of course, that is an event, of course, where we have, of course, to be when I've got, of course, that is something where we got, of course, to know, of course, all the situations where we are, in the manner where we are. And that is the situation. And of course, the crossing of the street is always safe if you get a little bit of that rock and roll on the south, and turning around about. And of course, that is the way, I guess. That is the way. So you have to build these bridges. And of course, we have to understand, Understand understanding, and then building these bridges based on understanding. It comes with understanding that it's not a disease. It has its strengths. My strengths lie, of course, in all the appellation when we have, of course, to fully understand the performance. That is just where we have, of course, to understand where we are, of course, now today. And myself, financially stressed, was attacked by surprise a few years ago, and gotta go retrieve the documents at the Jewish General Hospital. Gotta go retrieve the documents at the Jewish General Hospital. I was attacked by surprise. Well, I wish I could afford those, but another time. I was attacked at the Jewish General Hospital. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I hit my head on the concrete. It was bloodied up, and I had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder. I went to the Jewish General Hospital. We cracked it back, cracked it back, and of course cracked it back, and of course we cracked it back, So I was put on some meds, and those medicaments were probably for pain. I have to go and give myself until September 11th as a new deadline to go retrieve the archives at the Jewish General Hospital. The archives. I'm curious, when exactly was that event when I survived that vicious surprise attack, and my life prior to 2014 remains a mystery. I don't know if I was on drugs, was I a junkie? Was I a junkie? Was I drinking heavily? Alcoholism usually can cause memory loss. I know I lived in that moldy underground small place, like a prison cell. It was like a tight small prison cell, and I guess I served my time. So I moved there 2015, and I was depressed, suicidal. I crossed Canada coast to coast, I crossed Canada coast to coast. And of course, having crossed Canada coast to coast, that event, of course, made me come out of being depressed and suicidal, And of course, having come out of my depression, being depressed and suicidal, crossing Canada coast to coast made me establish a strong esprit de corps. And here you can cross perpendicularly, You can cross perpendicularly. You can cross perpendicularly. Just gotta be careful, of course, because some other people might cross like a perpendicular manner. So whatever the case may be, that is, of course, the situation awareness where we are, of course, today, and where we are now in the sphere, of course, of living now with the financial stress. And speaking of financial stress, I guess we're gonna go get even more stressed, eh? Well, these I recommend to recycle right away. Don't leave these here, because you never know, You recycle them right away. I'm $10,000 in debt. So back to Asperger's, of course, is this: we have to work on building the bridges. And Asperger's, we have three main problems. And I was depressed and suicidal. It's the depression and suicidal rates for Asperger's is actually 9 times higher than neurotypicals. And I was depressed myself. I lived to being suicidal, and I crossed Canada coast to coast. I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And that's what got me out of being depressed and being suicidal, and crossing Canada was quite an event in my life, which I really gonna discuss it in a bit. Hold on. I'll be able to pay my rent. Because I got deposited before, because September 1st is soon, so. Gonna pay Sunday. I'm gonna pay down. I guess. Actually, I should pay all my bills now to get it done, eh? Yeah, I'll do that. This is rent money right here, so. One more bill to pay. Gotta pay bills, man. Gotta pay bills. Pay bills, gonna pay my hydro bill. It's exactly $72 Canadian. It went down by $4. Well, because I got a fluctuating rate. It fluctuates with the consumption, you know? Okay, so now, let's see. Oh yeah, now we're back in the red, so ending the month, ending in the red, starting in the red. Minus 344. Supposed to get some work next week, I hope so. Since they took off the hand sanitizer, I'm gonna hand sanitize with my own. Strongly recommended. Just keep the protocols of the COVID health sanitation protocols, and made in Canada. I have to refill it. It's going down, but with this I'm not gonna waste. So, it's cold. It feels very cold. 20 seconds. Some more. See? One more time. 20 seconds. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just gonna shake it a bit because there's a little bit there, so it doesn't come out by here. But I have one full one at home because I bought a few of them about 3.5 years ago. They're Canada, made in Canada. See, antiseptic hand sanitizer. Got that maple leaf also tied up. So yeah, paid my bills. Gonna be able to pay my rent Sunday, and that is it for now. We're gonna just rock and roll and we go. But I'm already in the red. Just gonna double check everything's here and take a little bit of that. And these. This is a 20 for tonight. Here's some sweets on my way back, maybe some food if there's no donations. And that's how we rock and roll. So just gonna enter, see if they got something at the depth there. I indulge in playing the rent money. I'm gonna put it safe. Monday I'm gonna have to go pay my phone bill, so that's gonna be the last bill. I'm gonna go on the first Monday. It's gonna be my last bill to pay Monday, and maybe I'll go Sunday. Maybe I'll go Sunday. I'll see. Rock and roll, so there's another rock and roll with that, and here we're gonna just play it a lot of a bit. Hi, madam. How are you? So I'm okay. I can't complain, you know. But now I'm gonna be better if I win. No, I need you. Can you replay for me the tickets? I want the replaying this one, the Lotto Max, both of them.
Give it to me.
Yeah.
Only one.
Yeah, I'll check in this one and then I'll give you the other one. I keep the old ones. Thank you. This one I can't scan it. Oh no, it's gone. Oh, I won $2. Man.
That's all?
Yeah.
Okay. $8, please.
$8? That's good. Actually, can you also replay this one, please? Yeah. Usually I don't replay this one, but whatever. Just.
$12.
Yeah. These are the old ones. Oh, these are. I keep all the old ones. Thank you. How's business?
I'm no boss.
No, I said, how is the business?
Okay, yeah. The boss knows, huh?
Maybe sometimes, eh? Have a nice day, madam.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So, I forgot to turn it off. Anyway, so I got a little bit of chance with that, and that is something which we gotta get doing with the drilling, and it's something where we have to, of course, get it on the left and the right, and I gotta get it on now, you know, to be where we are, you know. And it's just something where we have to be, and we have to quantify, of course, all the appellational circumstances. But yeah, I play 50-50 with my anonymous friends, so certainly hope. I mean, we've been struggling and gonna go a little bit of that hydration and gonna go a little bit to the mountain, but now I'm happy. Played lotto. We don't play much, once a week, so it's $4 a week. I don't have other vices than that. Well, I do have vices. I'm not gonna pretend. I lust, you know, but fitness and good food and good wine. But I don't do drugs. I even bought 4 years ago and I still have it. Just gonna put this in the. Wow, look at those. There's so many sixes. So many sixes. That's random by the computer generation. I never had so many sixes before. This is the automatic computer generated, right? This in the middle. See, it's $4. I split 50-50 on this one, my anonymous friend, and so usually I don't play 3, but I decided today to play 3 because we play only once a week together, kind of the same numbers. It's been like a few years, and so many sixes. I never saw that before in my life. 6 is representative of the sun, according to Papa Crowley, Berry, New Jersey. I'm just gonna put these away and gonna go into geopolitics, gonna finalize on Asperger's and go into geopolitics. So, wow, so many 6s. Like that's generated by the. Computer. That's generated by the computer. The Lotto Quebec computers. Well, it's kind of like, it's mathematics basically, you know. Wow, but how does it work really? I know a little bit about, I'm not going to pretend I'm that master of electronics or mathematics. I'm not a master. I guess what you consider above average. So there's computer generated random numbers, right? But they have a certain pattern in the chaos. There's a certain pattern in the chaos. There's a certain pattern in the chaos. There must be, because of course the sequences have to be somehow numbers. There's a certain amount of numbers, right? So you have a sequence of, you saw how many 6s there were. In this case, we had 5 6s, right? And then 3 other digits. 5 6s and then 3 other digits. So let's check. So if we are to check and inspect, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 6s, then you got 3 other digits and a 0, 1. So that number is So that computer random generated number it has to be, so 5 sixes, that's 5 digits, 3, so that's 8 total digits plus the line and the other 0, 1. So there's a principle there, right? It has to generate 8 digits and then two other digits separately. So that's the sequence. But of course 8, right? Because if it has 8, it could be 93 million, right? 93 million, and then and then you got 6 digits, because if you have 8 digits, it can go up to 99,999,999, right? So 99,999,999, but it could also be 0,000,000,001, right? So it starts from 0. It can start 0,000,000,000,001. The sequence, the random generated number, mathematically, right? Because if you have 8 components, that means that you can only go to 99,999. So 99,999,999 mathematically. But it starts at 0,000,001 though. So the sequence of numbers is so rare that it could be. What are the odds that I got 5 sixes? Right? What are the odds that I got 5 sixes? So the odds are very rare. It's quite something if you think about it. Right? It's not like that bus number. You see number 44, 44, 44, and then a 017. Because that's not a random. That has a certain credence. That number on the bus is not the number of the bus. The number of the bus is 138. And of course, you see the number 44, then a line, and then 17, right? So of course, this situation, of course, statement is, of course, the appellation, of course, that it is. And of course, the consequences which we are, of course, is something which we have, of course, to totally understand. Mathematically, so now we're going to delve a little bit into mathematics. I guess you see a bit of aspy weirdness here, oddities, but that is just basically mathematics. So the odds of us having, myself and my anonymous friend can prepare for one, a random generated number that out of the 8 digits, there were 5 sixes. So in other words, more than half, because half of 8 digits is 4. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Follow? So more than half of the numbers, the numbers could have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? That would have been also rare. But the rarity that there's 5 sixes, right? 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 5 sixes, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, and then 8, 3, 5. So the randomness of that is very rare. That it gave 6 sixes in a row. That is basically, because 8 digits divided by 2 is 4, right? So 4 would have been half. So in this case, more than half of the 8-digit number are sixes. The first are sixes, right? So that random generated sequence, and now of course somebody else is buying, and I wonder what their number was, because somebody else maybe made a purchase. In Montreal, Hawk Island is a 2.5 million people city. So we have all across Quebec, we have like 9 million people. So somebody else might buy a ticket now. You know? It's highly unlikely to get so many sixes in a row. The odds. So odds, even if it's a random generated, numerical, random generated numbers, I guess it could be random generated numbers, RGNs, system, RGNS, random generating number system, RGNS, a random generating number system. So I guess is the random number generating system RNGS, the random generating number system, which is of course computer based. You got some software because it has to print, right? It has to be, that's printed, so it's printed on paper and it's got ink, but of course it goes from 0 to 9, right? It's fascinating, isn't it? So yeah, but it's a different type of love, you know. I say I love mathematics in such a way. You have to understand that the love what I'm expressing here is nonetheless aspy type of love, you know. But aspies can love even people, and I love people. I love, if you want to do that loving with me, I am androgynous, pansexual, play that rainbow. You know. I am 50-50, a man, a woman, man. I was born in past lives, previous incarnations, and I love these. These are just so great, you know. I just love those. So beautiful, you know. Look at these beauties right here. Thank you, public workers. So nice. The only one thing that I'm gonna say is that I wish I could paint these benches. Just some purple, some blue, some green. That would be so nice, and I would actually do it voluntarily, lovingly, because I love colorful colors, and embellishing the public is something that I hold dear to my heart. So that is just the nowness and the aspiness, which manifests in such a way as these weird, awkward, odd behaviors or characteristics and traits. So Asperger's is not a disease. It's not an illness. It's not a disease. We're not a big population. We're a small, tiny community of Aspies in the world. Tiny, small community of Aspies in the world. Less than 1%. Even that, the 0.44% is given towards the 50%, because only 50% of the actual Asperger population of fellow Aspies has an official diagnosis. So the other half is about the same, 0.44%. If only 50% are diagnosed officially and 50% are not, and if that's mathematics again, gonna do some math, if of course is 0.44%, which is less than 1%, that adds up double to 0.88%, which still doesn't even make 1%. It doesn't even make 1%, right? So the percentages, 1% of course of 100 is 1. Right? 1% of 100 is 1. 1% of 1,000 is 10, right? Of 1,000 is 10. Of course, and it's something which, of course, we have to appellate. And of course, that is something where we go, and that is something where we, of course, we gotta get fully understanding about. We gotta get it on that XYZ type of situation where we are, of course, in the confluence in the world where we are engaged now, of course, to the obsequitum, of course, being generatus, the random generational numbers, is that, of course, the numbers are. There's a certain sense of dynamics to the proportions. So Asperger's is not a mental illness. We have to build those bridges. Myself have lived to being depressed and suicidal. It is 9 times higher. If it is 9 times higher, of course, than the other population. 9 times higher than the other population. And of course, 9 times higher, and I lived it. And another important aspect is, of course, that we got to get it on that. And of course, the other population is 9 times higher, and the other one, which is a major problem, is the lack of employment. I had many jobs. It's keeping the jobs, maintaining the jobs, a few months, 3 months, 4 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 weeks. It's always, of course, it's always only been a few months, 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks. I had many jobs, and Aspies, for a tiny community like myself, this is totally unacceptable. The unemployment for Aspies is 80+%. Can you even 80+? More than 80%. That's more than 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 equivalents to 8 out of 10. More than 8 out of 10. More than 8 out of 10. More than 8 out of 10. 4 out of 5. Can you, of course, compute that? 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10. 80+% of Aspies, of course, have, of course, lack of employment or lose their jobs, just like we lose friends. I don't have many friends. I lost many friends, and I don't want to waste your time. Don't waste mine. Don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. We don't. Friends with benefits only, Massages, exchanges, and you're 18 plus. I love those flowers. You want to discuss geopolitics, do rock and roll, business, art, and help build our empire together. Help build our empire, then we can rock and roll. Otherwise, we, I guess, can't too much rock and roll with that. But, that's it. Individual and the sovereign citizen. Of course, that is where we are today, in the consequential, life-affirming liberties and the individual sacrosanct sovereignty of myself as an individual Aspie with my fellow Aspie communities, and the bridges we got to build together. And, that's high unemployment rate, and high unemployment rate, 80%, 80% is such a high unemployment rate that is totally unacceptable. 80%, that's 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, even more than 80, that is consequently where, of course, we have to integrate, and we have to do much better, much better has to be done, and in all levels. And I had many jobs which I loved, even CHSLDs, but losing the jobs is a problem. And I'm somebody I don't do drugs. I don't know if I did before 2014. Maybe I was an alcoholic and a junkie. That's why I got that retrograde amnesia. And that doesn't affect mathematical skills, language skills. It affects personal memory, you know. Personal memories. Look at beautiful pink. It doesn't affect, of course, other capabilities. It affects, of course, solely and only. It affects the personal memory, like personal from high school and all that. It just black out before 2014. It's just these flashes of trauma and survived that vicious surprise attack. I don't know, all the scars I got on my body, plenty of scars, and it's it doesn't really matter, you know. Sometimes the memory comes back. Paradoxically, you can lose it with a trauma, and it comes back with a trauma, you know. So sometimes I wonder, because I got these weird, I don't know if they're dreams or what was going on. And the geopolitical event was, of course, the rise of the Islamic State terror group, and it reminds me that I did work with the RCMP and with Cissx, and because I found here in Montreal, in a newspaper that was freely distributed for the community newspaper, I found outright propaganda calling for all to support the Islamic State terror group actions against the Western world, here, and to pledge allegiance to the Islamic State Caliphate, which it seems that there has been certain paradoxical resurgence since 2024 last year. So I did some work, and my work as a geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist is I take great value in it, and of course that is what is my special interest. And ASPIs have to be supported, because I don't need a lot of support, but right now it's only financial. You know, ASPIs, we have these routines, ritual-like routines. Our ritual routines are usually revolved around spending with intensity, super concentration, super engagement, involved in the time spending in those special interests. And my holy trinity, of course, is geopolitics, sports, fitness. Rock and roll is my rock and roll as well, and dancing is my favorite sport. Look at these, how they spread out like a squid formation, eh? The beauties of Mother Nature here crusting from the cement. So of course, for ASPIs, these three problems: lack of friends, I have the solution, friends with benefits only, and the unemployment, I'm always open for business, work, and of course that's the solution. And of course the other part, the third one, or in whatever order, it could be employment and lack of friends, is of course the high depression and suicidal rate. So being that, of course, there's a high depression and suicidal rate, it's 9 times higher than a neurotypical. So for every neurotypical who lives through depression and being suicidal, there's 9 ASPIs. Although paradoxically, we're a small, tiny community. So of course, the paradoxical community, that we are so much higher to be depressed and suicidal than the rest of the population, and so much higher unemployment for ASPIs. But we have our strengths, and of course, I'm going to now finalize on Asperger's, and just go straight into my work: geopolitics. Leave the baggage at the door. If this subject topic doesn't interest you, please do not proceed from now to listen to these words, nor engage. If you don't know what the word geopolitics is, geopolitics relates to the study, the analysis, the consequential, everything to do with the world of politics as we know it internationally, worldwide, globally, à la mondiale. So that is geopolitics in a brief definition. It relates to geography, to politics, to history, to culture, to military affairs, to conflicts, to diplomacy. It's a whole universe, and whether we want it or we know about it, it affects us in A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, W ways. Even now, it has reverberations for us Canadians, Quebecers, Canadians, and my brothers and sisters in the USA. What affects us, you know, it is a matter of geopolitics. It's related to geopolitics, is of course the trade war. The trade war with the United States. The trade war with the United States is an ongoing, of course. And I have to say that although I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration back in 2019, I had predicted that there is, of course, a international conflagration, and that is something what we do, you know, gotta get it on that. Gotta get it on that, you know. So of course, being of course that we have of course to get knowing my position and my revelation, because it's great part of my work. Okay, so this back in 2019 in October, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, and so it is happening as I predicted it back in 2019. A World War III type of situation scenario. What I did not predict, however, was that there is going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. For example, United States beginning the Trump and second administration imposing tariffs on the world, a worldwide global trade war, right, with the newest increasing tariffs on India and imposing augmenting tariffs on Canada, because the first imposition of tariffs in 2018, that's when I started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018. And as a matter of fact, it's a Dragon versus Trump Imperial March. But we're going to reconcile in a democratic, Republican, pro-labor, love, universal, revolutionary, centrist manner by the implementation of my Trinity Arteries and the fusion of the true north, strong and free with the land of the brave, the home of the free. We'd add some loving and some massive public-private partnerships together, some massive public-private partnerships together. So that is just what we have to do, and of course what we have, of course, to appellate. So back in 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. What I did not predict was that there will be a deterioration of relations with the United States. So that I did not predict. I did not predict that our relations with the United States would take such a dramatic turn, and it's alarming. It's alarming because, of course, it's new for me as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist, as I develop strategies for the North American Collective. So that's new for me as well. The realities of the ongoing trade war and the escalation of the Canada-US trade war is new. I have to account for it now as a new event which I did not predict. So I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, but I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. So that I did not predict, and that has to be now taken into account by me fully in all my work thereafter, since of course Trump started imposing tariffs on Canada as well as most and rest of the world in the major countries around the world. So that I have to account for. So what I predicted is that there was going to be an international conflagration of World War III, but I did not predict. This is new. I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with and between, of course, the United States and Canada. And to such an extent that I'm deeply alarmed. I get goosebumps when I discuss about it, not just because I told you after I got out of my depression 2017 and I crossed Canada coast to coast, I established a strong esprit de corps. My family in Canada and the brothers and sisters down south in the 50 states I consider as a big family, which we have a common destiny, common purpose. We've constituted what I call as a philosophy North American civilizational complex, and this North American civilizational complex is a new emergent civilizational complex which is not totally divorced from Western civilization, but it is distinct from Western civilization. So that requires I've discussed it. I have videos in the past, and I have many videos in the past discussing about it, and that's just what it is. So I discussed that in the past, and it's my thesis, my formulation as a philosopher. As a philosopher, of course, as somebody who walks, of course, and goes, and to get it on the go with that. And that is something where we have to be familiar with in all the constancies where we are, of course, to familiarize ourselves with a position and to love, of course, and to know and to fully understand this complex where we got now going, of course, to get now the solutions where we are at an impasse, because we have to have the most cordial economic, socially dynamic, military economic. We have, of course, to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. So this statement you cannot negate. You cannot say in the negative. You only have to affirm it with a yes, 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 yes. So it cannot be negated. It cannot be negotiated. So this formulation of this principle is a non-negotiation. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot say no to it, and you cannot neither say maybe to it. I'm going to make the statement, and I'm going to make a reference to how this statement is pertinent to the pi symbol. The pi symbol is represented by the letter N. And for the letter N, for Normandy, natural, neurodivergent, neutral, the letter N. It has like two heads, two faces, such as our empire would have two heads, two faces, one benevolent, goodness and kindness, the other one punishing. And so that is, of course, just the development of those. So the pi symbol represents the relation the circumference and the circle, right? The circumference and the circle. So the circumference and the circle is always the pi symbol, not to be confused with a pie, edible pie such as a bacon pie, chocolate pie, vanilla pie, or strawberry or any other type of pie. The pi symbol is that N, double-headed, double-faced, two heads, two faces, N to one side, and that N with two heads, two faces is a symbol, mathematical symbol, representing the circumference, the relation between the circumference of the circumference of the circle and the diameter, the ratio thereof. The ratio pi is 3.1415, and it continues ad infinitum. All right, so you can round it up when you multiply 3.14, the diameter times 3.1416, but it's 3.1415, and then 8666, 156, 333, 1718, 1566. It goes on and on and on, right? So that is a constant in mathematics, and such for us has been, at least since the dissolution of the British Empire after the Second World War, that this constant geopolitical reality for us Canadians, and vice versa, reciprocally for the United States vis-a-vis Canada, and Canada vis-a-vis the United States, although the United States has a border with Mexico, that is of course the consequential that it is so that we together in reciprocity, both Canada vis-a-vis the United States and the United States versus Canada, we have to work to have the best economic, social, sports, cultural, economic, social, military, defense, social, cultural, military, defense, relations with each other. So we have to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. The best economic, social, diplomatic, military action, diplomacy, structure of politics, social culture, sports, fitness, at all levels. At all levels, we have to have the best economic, social, financial relations with each other. At all levels, we have to have that, At all levels, we have to have that. And of course, that is just something which we have, of course, to implement as much as we can. So those dynamics, of course, have to be sequitur, and of course, have to be understood fully in all the dynamics where we are, of course, now, and the naturalness of course, all the abilities to further navigate and further, of course, move towards that level, of course, of furthering our understanding and our relationship with, of course, the United States, and vis-a-vis the United States vis-a-vis us. That is, of course, just the consequence where we have, of course, to move and direct our forces and recharge and, of course, redo and reconstruct and reconcile from today forward, because that is our main interest. That is our main interest. To have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with each other. That is a constant. Has been so at least since the dissolution of the beginning of the dissolution of the British Empire post the Second World War, at least. So that's already a few decades ago, for the past decades, and it is so today, and it will be so in the future. It will be so in the future. I got a few seconds left and across. It will be so in the future. At least I guess maybe we're gonna have, of course, maybe we're gonna have a world federation, but until then, like the fifth element type of world federation, it is so, It is so. So being that it is so, we have to work towards that. Reestablishing and even further solidifying the relations with the United States economically, financially, socially, culturally, at all levels. It's just the way it is. You cannot negotiate with it. It's non-negotiable. Just like that pi symbol, which represents the relation, of course, mathematical relation representation for the circumference. It's always 3.1415. It's always a constant. And of course, that has always been so. But not always, of course. So always is actually post the Second World War. After the dissolution of the British Empire really began, because when the British Empire had more power, economic, social, military power, that's not really applicable in that way. But after that, right? After that. I wish I could fill this up. Oh, you got a little soup. What is that? like condensed soup. I'm gonna leave it for somebody else. Canada. Eat it well. Because I have. Just wanted to check the pantry there. I wish I could fill it up, but wish I could check, you know. I wish I could check. I wish I could fill that up. Whatever. That's good. Somebody got some soup, condensed soup. You can just enjoy and condense it up. Gonna leave it for somebody else. In my past videos, sometimes you see me taking bread from there, or sometimes they put bread. And last time I put some, not much. I took more than I put, to be honest, because I'm financially stressed. But I guess if I wouldn't be, I would definitely just drop some food there, and hope you don't waste it if I do that, because I don't want people to waste, because food security, gotta salute our farmers, food producers, you know. Food producers. The food producers. You know? The food producers, and of course that's super important, you know. Food production, just like we discussed earlier, all the trucks, you know. All the trucks that are carrying goods, the truckers that are carrying good now. I'm looking because sometimes it's just a mess, and people don't do their part to put the recycling in the recycling, you know? To put the recycling in the recycling. Some people just don't do their part of putting the recycling in the recycling. Just like I see cans and sometimes I put them, you know, just put them in the recycling, and that's it. That's why we need the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, the Imperial Integrated Dance League. So our main interest when it comes to external foreign affairs, so again, it's nothing to do with internal affairs. Internal domestic affairs are a different matter entirely. So I'm strictly discussing external affairs. Our main interest is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. That is not something which can be negotiated. So it's not negotiable. We cannot negotiate with that fact. That fact is just a geopolitical reality, and it is so. So that's why, of course, we have to work on that. And we have, of course, to be admitting that 75%, of course, that 75% is, of course, our business and export, of course, with the United States. More than 75%, more than 3/4 of our business goes, of course, to the United States. So that also we have to be realistic, because Europe at this time, they're also struggling. And they're also struggling financially. And of course, they're also struggling, and the economic engine of the European Union, Germany, is also struggling. So they're not going to be able to absorb, saluting the ambulance drivers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, construction workers. I need you to help build me the four, us together the four for our empire. Not just for me, for you, for us, for all of us. Get into that a bit. But saluting, of course, the ambulance drivers, you know, first responders, the electricians, the plumbers, and the welders, and all involved, of course, in the production, distribution of food. And that is just something what we have, of course, to get. And it's just something what we have to understand fully as we see this beautiful garden here. This beautiful garden. And I just love these gardens with a yellow, full of yellow flowers. It's just so nice, you know. And that's just beautiful there. That one, look at those. I love yellow flowers like that. It actually although I'm going up the hill, I got that big backpack. It's got about 44 pounds, and in that backpack, auctioning it for $1 million. Red, my favorite color. I got those red gloves, by which I have and am. Thank you to my anonymous friend. Anonymous friend wasn't my friend because of the money. If I make $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion, I'm gonna give 50%. Gifted me those bags, and gifted me those gloves for boxing. The gloves the red ones which I train with since 2018, and I've been advocating to build the ring project for a few years ago, and build a ring made of aluminum and steel back in 2018, and it was a project which is ongoing, and that was something which of course we have to continue in the Imperial Republican complex, which of course is a call to build the Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, of course, for all of us, of course, Canadians and the United States, and together on the Canadian-US border to build the biggest ever sports complex arena ever built. And we're gonna get into it. See, we're now going up, and I wonder sometimes how the rents are over here, and I know there's a lot of people financially struggling, not just myself, but many in Canada, United States, and many Aspies. You know, thank you to the fellow Aspie who made a donation of $25.44. You know, made a donation of $25.44, and that was a big donation. I got a bottle of wine. I got some a bottle of wine, some sweets, and and bacon with the money. It was to feed myself for the Sabbath. Sabbath begins tonight at midnight. Sabbath begins tonight at midnight, and gonna be a little bit of that on the budget Sabbath, and so I still gotta pay my phone bill. And once my phone bill is paid, maybe I'll go Sunday or Monday to pay it, and then that's gonna be, of course, consequently the paying of the bills, and something which we of course have to do is pay the bills. It requires, you know, a little bit of those money, you know, in the information where we have and in the information where we go with it, and that's just something which of course I have to be doing and you have to be doing, and it's all about paying the bills. Nowadays it's financial stress for the majority of the population. Not all, some are very well off. Please give some charity, you know, finance some finance some charity, you know. Finance some charity, you know, do a little bit of that, and do a little bit of that rock and roll. We gotta get it on that, and there are sometimes where we have, of course, to do it. It requires doing as well, you know, and from theory into practice, sometimes it's blood, sweat, and tears. You know, I always encourage people and love to see people working out, and I started my fitness journey back in 2017 after I crossed Canada coast to coast, and I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. 80 and 93 pounds, you know, that is how much I lost. Between 80 and 93 pounds. I started my fitness journey. I created my own workout training program system, which is an efficient, effective workout training program system, which of course have created to go with such a scenario as we live today, in such a scenario, you know, a World War III scenario, which is unfolding exactly as I had predicted, back to the US-Canada situation and the geopolitical declaration, which one has to affirm with a positive yes, that we, both from Canadian side, as it comes to foreign affairs, related to foreign affairs, to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, diplomatic relation with each other. Yeah.
That is good.
That is just a dictum, a declaration which is a constant. We Canadians, this is in the US, hey, where I was born 3 times post 1776, just read George Patton's Through a Glass Darkly, one of my favorite poems. There, George Patton did not mention that he was my wife once, although I was his wife also, so he was my wife, I was his wife. And of course, he didn't mention. Okay, maybe, okay. I wasn't sure. You have to get priority, you know, because it's a pedestrian there, but the curve is so nice and pointed, and I said, okay, no problem. It's a pedestrian, you know, so that is what we have to do. Just in the public, we got added responsibilities, duties, and obligation, and that is in the public. Myself as an individual, you know, sovereign citizen, and that is just something what we have to do, you know, for the appellation, you know, to get it on the go. And that is something what we got, you know. That is just something what we of course have to do, and of course have to do as cordial citizens. As cordial citizens, co-citizens. In the Publik, I have added responsibilities, duties and obligations which I don't have at home. But we all have comparative to each other. Me and you have towards me and I have towards you. And they have towards me and they have towards you. So the individual and the collective in the Publik. And I love these beautiful flowers, you know. And I love these beautiful flowers. Especially these pink ones. These quadruple my smile right now. I love it, love it, love it. Bright, vivid colors, you know. As we're gonna go towards the sun, you know. And we're gonna go, of course, towards the dynamics. The mountain is over there, and that's just for us. The reality is that we must work, and all as a priority, as a number one priority. If we are to have a hierarchy of foreign affairs priority, for us is to the U.S. to have the best economic, social, financial, commercial, military relations with the U.S. and the United States vis-a-vis us, although they have a border with Mexico, right? Our geographical realities, the fact that we are surrounded by two oceans. To the east is the Atlantic, to the west is the Pacific, where I went and I saw and touched physically in 2017, and August went to Vancouver, British Columbia, and September went to Halifax, and 2017 in August we left for Vancouver from Montreal by bus. It was 3.5 days, and when I reached Banff I had a revelation, and that event, crossing Canada coast to coast that summer 2017, made me come out of my depression. I established a strong esprit corps, and I said so many things to see, to do, and this collective North American civilization complex. And yeah, we have those two oceans. We have the geographical reality. We have the social historical, you know. We have the historical realities. And the historical realities are that we constitute, and we are started forming, and more after the Second World War in the 21st century. We are an emergent collective civilizational complex, a North American civilizational complex. That is the philosophy, and you can see some videos which I dedicate if you want to commission some work vis-a-vis just on specific topics such as the DMA or the TMDT, well, the total mobile defense theory, which I actually started developing after I came out of my depression in 2017. Most of my work, artistic, rock and roll, geopolitical work, comes after I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017, and I still got some 50 states to visit before I go on that die, you know. Bury me, a third of me in Hampton, New Jersey, with Papa Crowley, a third of me up in the back of the Montreal, Mount Royal, at the back of the Belvedere there, and a third of me sent to the city of the pyramids, and you can see, of course, the beautiful city there, beautiful skyline. Let's take a few steps towards it. So our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, financial relations with the United States. And that you can see the beautiful core of Montreal, and that is the Montreal core downtown area there, which you can see. You can see the pyramid, but you can't really see the pyramid from here, but you can see part of the downtown core area. It's quite beautiful, eh? So very beautiful city, metropolis. It's not really a city, you know. It's a big city, you know. We gotta get it on that, and gotta get it on that love, and that's something what we gotta get doing, you know. And always gotta be grateful, and the gratitude, of course, is something what we have to fully understand and fully, of course, get the dimensions where we are involved in all our civilizational well-being, that we are to be accorded these special relational complexities, which sometimes can be broken down into principles that we must strive towards, to have the best economic, social, financial, economic relations with the United States as a number one priority. So just that's non-negotiable. Again, you cannot negotiate with that. You have, of course, to say yes, and that is just something where you have to fully say yes to that. It cannot be negotiated, you know. So it cannot be negotiated with. You can negotiate with other things, But now with that principle. So that's a principle, but that's also not just a principle, it's a reality. The principle is that we must work to attain the best relations, military, economic, social, financial, diplomatic with the United States, and the United States with us. That's why my way to fuse via mass public-private partnership, and especially the implementation of the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, best. Because of the aforementioned reality, geopolitical reality, that when it comes to foreign affairs, as a number one priority for us is the United States, and the United States, Canada is the number one priority. But implementing my DRT, part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world, by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican Democratic Complex. Best, not to be confused with psychiatry or psychology. When I mentioned the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion, it has nothing to do with psychiatry or psychologically with psychology, nor with psychiatry. Because there's the bipolar condition, right? Bipolar disorder, it's called bipolar condition. So do not confuse it, do not conflate those two. It's strictly merely geopolitical strategy. It's the bipolar geopolitical strategy, it's called. The bipolar geopolitical strategy, basically fusing Canada and the United States, and that says made in Canada. Made in Canada. Some of them in the past weeks you can see that we film it, and some of them say, of course, that they're made in the USA. That they're made in the USA. That they're made in the USA, you know. That they're made in the USA there, you know. So basically that they're made in the USA. That they're made, and these ones are made in Canada, if you see. Fabriqué means made in the USA, and I guess that's another ASPE characteristics. And even before the trade war commenced, I was of course involved in where the products were made. And another ASPE trait would be for us to focus on that detail. See the detail, the number there, whatever, it's a number and letters B and Q. Q must be Quebec and 32221, whatever, something representative. I guess there's maybe an industry standard. Maybe an industry standard. Maybe an industry standard, but I'm not going to speculate much. But it might be, of course, just where it's produced, or where it's fabricated specifically in Canada, or it might be the name of the number representing an industry standard. Because that B and Q, National Quebec, maybe I'm going to press the button there. So that is just our main interest, is to have the best economic, social, financial, military relations, the best that we can attain. And I believe the DRT and the way to fuse Canada and the United States into not one state, 13 new states we're going to add to get a fuse, and you're going to add us, we're going to add each other, and we're going to create this massive public-private partnership. It's not one, it's 13. The king is absent. The king is absent. The king is absent. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic, you know. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic, and of course the Republic, the king is absent. And of course I'm calling now for the NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB, to please mass finance and give to the firefighters, the public workers who pick up the garbage, reduce the tickets, and give them some tickets. Give them some tickets. The season's gonna start, and I would appreciate. And we're gonna hold games. We're gonna hold games, and we're gonna build the four now together. Canada, United States is gonna fuse. Calling to sign the Imperial Republican Democratic Perpetual Union September 11th later this year, for the World Peace Congress. 11th of September this year. Let's do it ASAP. We only got much days, but if not, in April 8th, 9th, 10th, and December 24th, Dragon versus Trump. September 11, 2026. As we're going to merge Fuse Canada together into the complex and the aforementioned strategy. So that, of course, idea, it's not really an idea, is of course a reality, a geopolitical reality. So meditate on it and ask questions, if you will, and support commission, some work, and if you can, if you're willing, and then we're gonna go drill with that. So back again, where we got another aspect of this realities, where we have, of course, now that, of course, the trade war seems to be escalating, although there seems to be a little bit of deals made, but it seems that with the new tariffs which began on India this week, and now the geopolitical event in our backyard is Venezuela. Venezuela, I have to discuss at depth and at large, and it has to be consequently again discussed within the bipolar strategy for the North American Collective. And all my theories as they relate to North America, Canada, United States fusing into the Imperial Republic and Democratic Complex. My dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally a mass public-private partnership, and even across NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which of course the North Atlantic Treaty Organization constitutes a collective defense, military defense, security alliance since 1949. Last year we celebrated the 75th birthday. So of course all that put underneath the great umbrella of the aforementioned discussions and theories and protocols, once we have discussed them, I'm going to now take the liberty to discuss what I will to build together with you, the 4 as we cross by the side of Mount Royal where we were yesterday at top, and now we're just going to go by the side of it, and of course we're going to just kind of slide it out. Maybe we're going to go to the top by that side, or maybe we're just going to go another route, because we were here yesterday, and I guess since we go so often at the top of the mountain, maybe sometimes just slide in a little bit of different routes, and slide in a little bit of that location. And because I already came 3 times, I guess, this week, the top of the mountain, you already know we go in the forest deep, and I guess sometimes it's good to do a little bit of change, although Aspies, sometimes we do have, I myself for years and years and years, and have this ritual-like routine, but I guess now I just want to get as much sun as I can. So as I strategize, when can I get as much sun as I can, it's going to be to get some sun, right, if I go by the side, by the side there or that side. I guess most sun I'm going to get it on the other side. So as I go towards the sunset, I think that's where we go, because most of the time we go to by the mountain, and maybe we're going to go there tomorrow, or as we're expecting a little bit of rain, so we're just going to clock a little bit on that, going a little bit of different route. But that is the mountain, Mount Royal. Now we're atop of the mountain, now the West Mount, and that's Mount Royal proper, and now when we go on that side, it's kind of on that West Mount type of side, but we're going to change it a bit. Usually we go to the mountain, the headquarters of the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, right about the top there, the Belvedere, and I guess we're going to go see the city, but we're going to go for another way. So my will to build the 4 of course is, and before I do say of course where we are to build the 4, that is something of course where we have to fully understand, of course, appellate integrity, that of course this is beautiful here. Thank you to the public workers who built this, especially this one. You feel it, just so nice. It feels very fluffy, and I kind of love the colors here. So this is part of the public works. I always admire the gardens, and it's quite nice, Imagine all the flowers which grow there, and which it takes some work, some brains, and some muscle. And I always appreciate the embellishment of the cities here by the garden, because I don't have a garden myself, but it's always nice for us, myself, who don't have a garden, who I appreciate the public embellishments and the public gardens such as this, and it makes me think of the Forgotten Goddess Temple, which I will to build. And now we're going to discuss my 4 buildings, which I will to build, together with you, of course. Going to take these glasses off, auctioning the glasses, my pants, my underwear, everything that I have, that I'm wearing now, the backpack, the glasses, and everything that I'm wearing. Gonna get it for that meal. Get it for that meal, $1 million, give half. 50%, to my anonymous friend, who wasn't my friend because of the money. And I guess I moved there where I live now with nothing really, only still looking for my birth certificate. I'm looking for my birth certificate. So of course the strategy which we're going to employ, and now I will to discuss of course the North American Collective and what I will to build together. So my will for us to build is of course the Forgotten Goddess Temple, you know, consequently, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. And of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the 11 times bigger than where we're gonna go, the oratory, St. Joseph's Oratory. That's what I will to build, and of course to be a major goddess blessed, because I created my surviving COVID, being depressed, suicidal, having so much stress. And look, that's the moon. You can see the moon there. See the moon, look at that. Part of the moon, you can see it and you can love with it. And that's something what we got, and that's something what we have to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Parallel, consequently, to and with the Forgotten Goddess Temple, let's build the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, which changed names, you know, from the Caesar Superdome, you know, to the Caesar Superdome, of course, to get it on the building of the Caesar Superdome. And that is, of course, where my 49ers lost in Super Bowl 47. In Super Bowl 47, when my 49ers lost to the Ravens by only 3 points, I'm a 9-9. I give some charity, reduce the ticket cost, and support a dream, support the building of the greatest, biggest ever majestic sports arena ever built. Majestic sports arena ever built on the Canadian-US border to be 11 times bigger than the Hardball Ball. Hardball Ball. Well, actually, the Hardball Ball was the name of the Super Bowl. It has several nicknames. So Super Bowl 47 has several nicknames. Super Bowl 47, his name has several nicknames. One is called. One of the nicknames is Blackout Ball. The other one is Hardball Ball. The other one is Bro Ball. So it has several names. And of course, it's part of my top 5 favorite Super Bowls. Paradoxically, where my 49ers lost. The other 3 ones is where my 49ers won, and one of them is not related to a 49ers, when Tom Brady won against the Rams, his sixth ring, of course, won in a 13-3, you know, 13-3, and of course 13-3 was the lowest ever scoring Super Bowl in the history of the Super Bowl of the NFL. And that's one of my favorite. It was so defensive, but really I enjoyed it a lot. A lot of people found it boring because it wasn't really action, but it was time management and defense and strategy. Time management related and defense related. So that is basically what we're gonna build on the Canadian-US border, where the first event is gonna be me fighting Donald Trump. The inauguration event is gonna be Dragon versus Trump. The inauguration event is gonna be Dragon versus Trump, and that is what we're gonna build, you know, the Imperial Coliseum, Dragon versus Trump, the Imperial Coliseum. We and Donald Trump are gonna fight it out, sportsmanship, and we're gonna build it 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Changed names, just like I changed my name, but officially still gotta pay that money to change it. But it's Adrian Hana Dragon, keep my hand. No HOLY, holy sacred divine name of your mouth, if it's not for a blessing. Hope you have an understanding, otherwise let it be best. So we're gonna build a massive Coliseum, Imperial Sports Arena. We're going to have sports in perpetuity, and we're going to have monthly sports fitness events dedicated to specific workers of our Imperial fusion, Canada, United States. And we're going to build it 11 times the size of what's now known in Louisiana, New Orleans, the Caesar Superdome, which before it changed name, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz, and before that, it was known as the Louisiana Dome. So it changed name several times, not just once, several times. You know, I changed my name only once, and I died during COVID. Look at those beautiful clouds. And we're also going to build the pyramid. The House of the Dragon is going to be scarlet red, and red, and crimson. Well, crimson and scarlet are shades of red, right? So crimson and scarlet are shades of red, and we got to salute our troops. Our troops there, you see all the troops, the tanks. Gotta salute our troops, and of course we're gonna build the Rainbow People's Palace as well for my fellow LGBTQ community, which I'm part of, being 50-50 androgynous pansexual, you know. You get that 50-50, and just that's what we're gonna do, and that's just what we're gonna be welcome to do. So build a Forgotten Goddess Temple, GODDSS, got those trillions of kisses salute our brothers and sisters in uniform. Ain't nobody perfect, that includes that me and you. And I also salute and sing that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who take their second chances and do their criminal rehabilitation. You take your second chances, you do your criminal rehabilitation. You know, that's always something which I salute, which I commend, and which I am really proud of when I hear that and hear that being done. And so I'm gonna go now because I want to show you the building which I made reference to. Is we're gonna build a Forgotten Goddess temple 11 times that. So we're gonna go exactly there to begin the Sabbath, because the Sabbath starts at midnight, and usually we go atop the mountain, Mount Royal there. Usually we go atop there, but now we're just gonna go towards the sun. We're gonna change a little bit, but usually, you know, we take either that route or another route or different routes to get atop to the mountain, which is there, the Belvedere. So here's where the peak known as Westmount is. Other peak is known as Outremont, and Mount Royal is there. So the whole, now we're on the mountain. It's, you see how it goes up and down, and it keeps on descending. But at the top of the mountain there, Mount Royal, as you can see, flag spotted. The Canadian flag there, I always have it on me 24/7. Don't ask me when I got this tatted up, because my life probably decades ago, my life prior to 2014 remains a mystery. Spring 2014, and you know that is something which, of course, I got maybe a lot of trauma, or maybe I was a junkie, maybe I drank too much alcohol. Of course, now is what matters, of course, as in the plurality of all our constituents' well-being is something which we have, of course, to the victims of those clouds as they pass by. And I think something is in my right eye. I'm trying to pokey, I guess. Gonna look at the sun and blink a little bit and say, Goddess, special names, Goddess bless, and that eye's gonna get that health, you know. Beautiful sky, what a beautiful sky is there. And then the other eye now the left eye, If you curse me, we'll be cursed 11-fold, you know. If you curse me, be cursed 11-fold. If you curse me, be cursed 11-fold. If you curse me, be cursed 11-fold. I guess I paid my dues. I served my time with all the trauma, the suicidalness, the suffering, the lost, losing friends, losing employment, being called a disease, all the Aspiness. Why is that L and that number 44 here? This Aspi, sometimes we're focused with details. L44, what is the point of that number there? L44, that remains a mystery, because this is put by the Communication of Quebec, and it discusses the firms who were here. Not the firms, farming. William Notman in 1859, before Confederation. This is before 1876. This is even before the Dominion of Canada. I lived here as a Quebecois, but not as a Quebecois as we have them today, many past lives, many incarnations, between 1688 as a woman. As I told you, you got to read that George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly, when, of course, George Patton discusses reincarnation. And I was, of course, born in many past lives, many incarnations. And, of course, now we got to get it on that go. And, of course, we got to get it on that. This is from Museum McCord, and I guess that's the N is the Nord for north, kind of maybe coordinates. That's detail is in French, but it's the same without the accent. That's the detail word for detail in French, because this is all in French. It discusses the farm. The farm from Lemming Villa Farm, and William Notman in 1859. But I don't know why there's this 44 there. There must be something. These Aspies were weird like that. We're weird with details. We have this weird obsession. It's not really an obsession with certain details, which some people would say, hey, I didn't even notice that. That's weird. You're weird. Yeah, some Aspies were weird. But let's see if it's the same. Oh no, see? This is L43. So 44, 43, I'll bet you that the other one's 42, it's decreasing. So that's 44, and I guess that's the last one. Was the one with 45 there? I guess maybe they're gonna put close to 45, because this one's 43, right, see? And this one discusses a photo from 1958. The plan was a building, of course, of the structure here from Mount Royal. So it's historical events. Wow. see the things we discover when we go around about Montreal. You know, sometimes you gotta discover a little bit of Montrealness. You know, big city has a lot of course, has a lot of history. You know, let's see if this one. I bet you this one's 42. No, this one's also 43. Oh, because it's the same. Yeah, because it's also 1958, 1959. That one's 44, then 43. We're gonna see if the other one's 42. We're gonna see if the other one's 42. We're gonna see. Yeah, the other one's 42. See? The other one is 42. I guess because this is different, see? The numbers on the side. So that's 42. Then you got 43, 43, and 44. 44 is the last one. So now... So now we're going to see this other one. Isn't it fascinating how all the things we have here is quite a fascination. 41. 41, Tramway, 1939, Chemin Shakespeare. It was rebaptized Remembrance in 1939, just before the Second World War started. From 1929, line 93. And then you had the line 11, which still goes. The line 11 still, there's a bus, line 11. Fascinating, eh? We learn history of Montreal, which I lived many times, even before 1500s. I was born here on the island several times. Many past lives, many incarnations, you know, across all the times that I've passed and I've lived. And that is always something which is good, of course, to go as we rock and roll by the mountain now. And now we're going to go Friday. I just want to go check the sunset there. And because usually we go to the top of the mountain there, Mount Royal, but we're going to change it up a bit. Sometimes, you know, we got to get a little bit of different routes. Although we have that routine, we're probably going to be there tomorrow at the mountain or Sunday or next week for sure. we go almost every day there. Oh, but now it jumps 39. So it's missing 40. 40 is missing. Is 40 is there where this fellow is? Maybe. I didn't know this because I went straight to this one. Maybe 40, maybe 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 43, and 44 is the last one. Then I didn't see if there's a 45. Next time I don't want to go back, but we're going to see. But I think it ends at 44. Unless there's further up, I didn't see one, but unless there's the 45, number 45 there. So it's decreasing. The numbers are decreasing. That's what I wanted to figure out. So the 44 was the last one, and now we saw 43 twice. There was two 43s, L43, and we have 42, 41, and it jumped 40 unless where that my fellow citizen was there, the stop, if there was one like that, that means that, yeah, because it's going down, see, 38. So maybe where that person is, that's 40, number 40, because it goes 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. So they're decreasing. Quite interesting. So now leave the baggage at the door. We're going to discuss a little bit of the not a little bit, but somewhat in depth as much as we can. So I'm just going to finalize, actually just going to revise and do what I will to build. Yeah, see 37. So it's 37, 37, 38, 39, 40. Well, 40, I'm not sure it's there. Maybe it skips, or because that person was there and I didn't see it. I came straight for the other one. Maybe the 40 is there indeed. We're going to check out next time. And this is about Mount Royal. See, West Mount Summit, and here's Mount Royal, the three peaks, and here's Mount Royal, the top. And this is all sorts of historical information here in French if you want to discuss it, or if you are curious about knowing about Montreal. So let's build the fort. Help build the fort. Let's build the Forgotten Goddess temple. Like got credited 718 trillion kisses. So laying the foundations of the empire with 718 trillions of kisses. If anybody wants, of course, the empire with foundational empire, of course, with 718 trillions of kisses, that's just going to be the foundational of the empire, you know, to lay foundations for the empire with 718 trillions of kisses, 718 trillions of kisses, and that's just what we're going to do together with that lay the foundation in consequence thereof. So we're gonna build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, which is gonna be the biggest ever sports arena complex ever built in the history of mankind. In the history of mankind. In the history of mankind. So we're gonna build that massive structure. We're gonna build that massive structure, and we're gonna have sports in perpetuity there. So we're gonna have sports events, sportis in perpetuitas, all sorts of sports events, the high schools, the universities, the NFL, NHL, men and women. Yeah, it goes down. It goes down. So that's just what we're gonna do together. And we're gonna build the House of the Dragon, Pyramid, Scarlet, Crimson, or Shades of Red, and the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Imperial People's Coliseum, and of course, parallel, we're gonna build the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community, and that one's really nice. Look at that. See? Is that nice or what? That is super nice. You gotta check that out. If you look how beautiful that is, and somebody has art, and you know that's where we went yesterday, atop the mountain when it was raining, atop the mountain. That's the Belvedere, or that is actually maybe on the side of the Westmount to see. That looks like it's the side of the Westmount. So it could be a Belvedere from the side of Westmount, from Westmount, not from Mount Royal. That might be where they're gazing there. See, and of course that is something where we have, of course, to do together. So now I'm going to discuss the DMAA. It's actually the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action. The direct military assistance or action. It is a philosophy, it is a philosophical theory, it is actually not just a theory, it is a reality with potential consequences vis-a-vis as it relates to NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a military alliance, which Canada were part of, along with 31 other member states. 32, Sweden just joined a few years ago, and Sweden is last year. Sweden is the newest member of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries. So you have to pay attention, and you have to listen very carefully, and you have to meditate and discern, because it's important. It is a strategy also for furthering strategy for today, for tomorrow, and even for the coming relations of the 21st century as we're going to evolve together. So it's a strategy, it's a philosophy. It encompasses wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and information, and of course it is something very relevant to today's situation and world affairs, if you will, in the modus that we have, of course, all the situations where we are involved with now, and of course keep in mind that I predicted what's happening now. So the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, or it could be Direct Military Action or Assistance. The DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action and assistance, it could be, of course, consequently in all the manners where we have now to be, of course, in the side of the world, of course, where we are, the engagement of our further affairs with between NATO and us, and between NATO and the world. So it's as it relates to NATO. So as it relates to NATO, we of course have to fully integrate and fully implement and fully understand all the relations as it is in our domains, in our civilizational complex of North America, because Canada and the United States were part of NATO. So it's in relation to NATO as it provides action and is involved in, of course, world affairs, and it's of course something what, of course, we got to, of course, think about in all the situational aspects and the world at large. So the DMAA has, in other words, consequences. So the direct military action or assistance, assistance and action, it is something which is fundamental to our internal processes as we take further action, direct action, or assistance. So I'm going to give you a concrete example. So now, just to understand the philosophy, it's not necessarily a theory. It's not necessarily a theory or a theoretical framework, although it has some theoretical frameworks as it relates to the potential consequences of the DMAA. But the DMAA is a philosophy and it's a truth. And the consequences of the DMAA is potentially what, of course, can be related in the further appellation of the understanding the philosophy fully and what it is. You're going to see the terminologies are going to be more clear, and further understanding, wisdom, and knowledge is going to be provided as we discuss the DMAA, the direct military assistance or action, which can have consequences as it relates to NATO and the NATO complex. Just give me 44 seconds. So it's a theoretical framework, but it's also a reality. So it has several layers. Some of it might seem a bit academic, scholarly and complex. And of course it is related, of course, with geopolitics. So the geopolitical situation is that the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, creates potential consequences. So it's a frame of reference, it's a frame of working philosophy which NATO leaders and strategists have, of course, to consider fully, and consider that due to the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, there's a consequently a consequence. So of course this has nothing to do with humanitarian aid. So if a NATO member countries, for example, provides food, for example, or bandages, if it provides food or bandages, it has nothing to do with the DMAA in a humanitarian sense. So the DMAA is strictly related to military engagement. So providing ammunition or providing armaments or providing any assistance. But assistance is different from action, but it can be both in consequence to a conflict. So this relates, of course, in conflict, of course, to a situation where we are, of course, at a situation where we are, of course, to get, of course, under doing on now, and situation where we are to go to understand fully, where we have the procedure, of course, to get the information and, of course, the understanding, of course, of where we are, to fully comprehend and to fully understand where we are in the situation that puts us at risk, and, of course, in a vulnerability where we fully engage with this theory and this the reality. It's not really a theory, it has a frame of reference, but, of course, it can be fundamental, and, of course, in the aspects where it can be fundamental, of course, to be of great support and help. So the DMAA, direct military action or assistance, and those words, action or assistance, can be interchanged. So assistance and action or assistance can be reversed. So DMAA, direct military assistance, an action or direct military action or assistance, direct military action or assistance. So this DMAA has, of course, potential consequences, which is that, and which we got to get doing like that, and which we got to philosophize. And of course, the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action, has those consequences, which of course can be involved in all the polarity where we go, of course, where we are involved with all the situation where we are now, to take action, furthermore, to take action, and consequently to think about it strategically, because it's also a strategy in many ways. It opens us for us to develop strategies for the well-being of the NATO complex, and even to a certain extent for the world. It relates only to non-NATO member countries being assisted militarily by armaments, Russian armaments, ammunitions, training, helmets, bombs, grenades, uniforms, weaponry, munition, etc., etc., etc. It has, again, because I engaged with my anonymous friend and mentioned, I had a great conversation, and my anonymous friend pointed out how he can see him and he can be perceived, that it's lacks empathy and compassion. You have to devoid that. I'm not discussing my personal inclinations for humanitarianism, for charity, for well-being, for well-peace, which I do have as a human being. I'm just strictly involved in real geopolitics, real just military, from a military perspective. geopolitical military perspective, not humanitarian aid. So I'm not discussing whether they provide humanitarian aid. That doesn't come into the DMAA theoretical framework philosophy, because it's part of being, it's also a theory, it's also a philosophy, and it's also a frame of work, a geopolitical frame of work, right? The DMAA. The direct military assistance or action, of course, stipulates, and of course the proposition is that this DMAA, direct military assistance or action, or it could be both, action or assistance, can of course further, of course, consequently, of course, brutally, of course, get it on the go, and of course provide direct military assistance and action can consequently perturb and can create consequences such as foreign groups providing, supporting transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, such as the Islamic State, such as, of course, last year the RCMP dismantled on the 25th of October. On the 25th of October 2024, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever super lab in Canada, the biggest ever. Never has it been in the history of Canada. We've covered and discovered and seized our law enforcement agency, which is the RCMP, which is kind of like the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the biggest ever drug super lab, which potentially created 95 million doses of fentanyl, which potentially could have killed twice the population of Canada, you know. The population of Canada twice over. The population of Canada twice over. The population of Canada twice over. 88 million. Can you imagine? Just check the RCMP. Say, Surrey, BC, drug super lab, 25th of October. 4 days into Scorpio. About Scorpio. Astrology. RCMP, the biggest ever drug super lab, and paradoxically, the August 1st, White House's and Trump administration's directives to increase tariffs on Canada were directed due to the fact that Canada has become a mass producer and growing domestic producer of fentanyl, which the RCMP has warned us at least since 2015. The RCMP started sounding the alarm. Our Royal Canadian Mounted Police, our Mounties, the RCMP, they were sounding the alarm about 10 years ago. And especially during COVID, there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. There's a growing transnational criminal organized syndicate groups. And you can see last year what has happened is, of course, that this has become a reality. That, of course, specifically there was the RCMP who dismantled the biggest drug laboratory in the history of Canada. So many pills were seized, and of course the munitions and all sorts of things which could have harmed children, could have harmed a lot of Canadians. So flag spotted. When I flag my own, don't ask me when I got it, because probably decades ago, who knows. And this is the St. Joseph's Oratory, and of course that's where we're gonna build 11 times. We're gonna build, of course, 11 times bigger than this oratory, the Forgotten Goddess, which I credit trillions of kisses, of course. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is going to discuss it as we go up at the top, and then we're going to switch to another topic, and then we're going to switch to that French, you know. So the DMAA, of course, is a frame of reference, a referential work, a theoretical analysis, a philosophy. It's a whole doctrine also. It's a doctrine, a real doctrine, geopolitical doctrine as it relates to NATO. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is by NATO members providing, of course, certain military assistance or action as relates, of course, to our documentations of force events such as Libya intervention, such, of course, the Yugoslav intervention, and another intervention, which, of course, is part of the DMAA, direct Ukraine or Russia. Ukraine was not part of NATO when, of course, when it was attacked. It was not part of NATO. But nonetheless, NATO countries, ourselves included, we provided direct military assistance. So one of the A's has to be present for the DMAA to be understood and to be people put a frame of reference and to work. So the DMAA, direct military action or assistance, has to be fully understood in this perspective. Of course, once we have the domains, I'm going to stretch a little bit here, myself the back. So of course the domains, which of course we have to understand and fully, of course, appel, how we're going to go by that side, because we never went by that side. Sometimes we can go up by another side there. Let's see what they got. You know, wow, oh, they built a little bit of place, see how it was built there. You can go by that side if you will, like that, and go circumvent about it. And that is just something which we gotta do. So it's of course something, look at that beautiful sky. So in case of Ukraine, the DMAA, direct military assistance in action, was of course the referential frame, of course, to be in the appellation consequences where we are now involved, of course, that due to the direct military assistance or action, it of course has been in the appellation, of course, where we have, of course, to be fully knowledgeable about all the domains and all the dictums where we have now. So the DMAA, of course, it is something which, of course, has to be consequential and, of course, imprudently written, and, of course, we have to get on that go, you know. Look at that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful skyscrapers. Beautiful hot garden. This is what we gotta get doing. So of course the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is something what we have of course to get, and something what we have of course to consequently be of course in the level of our domains what we have and levels of our well-being where we got to get. We have to make a great, of course, colloquial implementation of all the systems where we are, and we have to make it on the go, and we have to fully understand now the beauty of this beauty. 11 times gonna build that building, and we're gonna go by this side, see if we can go out. Then we're gonna go by that side and go by that XYZ, and that's what we're gonna have to be. And of course that is something where we have to be doing on that. And the DMAA in the case of Ukraine has been assistance, not action, because we didn't take direct military action. So it's either or both direct military assistance or direct military action have or can be, of course, a situation, an action, an activity, an event in the case for the DMAA to be fully understanding and work, of course, the DMAA to work or to function in all the integral manners where the DMAA is active, present when NATO member countries provide assistance, military assistance, again, nothing to do with humanitarian, or when the NATO member countries take action, such as in the most recent one is Ukraine. Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine was not part of NATO at the time of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Was not part of NATO. Part of NATO. So Ukraine was not part of NATO, and consequently, of course, it is something which, of course, have to be understood fully, right? That this DMAA can potentially cause even transnational criminal syndicate organized groups to be, of course, financed by, of course, countries and nation states, which, of course, co-equivalent and co-parallel, of course, finance the international criminal syndicate organized groups to foment riots and even temper fentanyl for it to become in the bioweapon. More and more I'm thinking that this fentanyl, of course, is more like a biological weapon. Look at a beautiful sunset, more as a biological weapon than, of course, an actual practice where we are, of course, in the situational awareness where we get the dictums to be, and where we get, of course, all the propositions to fully understand that this DMAA, of course, is the situational awareness that is, of course, reciprocal, and that this DMAA can actually trigger mass action vis-a-vis adversity, vis-a-vis us in all, of course, our endeavors where we are naturally or not naturally, and of course where we are, of course, not naturally with the vis-a-vis all the representations where we are, of course, to get understanding and doing. So all that life-affirming situation as it relates to the DMAA, and of course gonna stretch a little bit here, gonna get that main out and take a look. So that's a beautiful city. Now we're seeing the north, right? That's west. You can see part of the river west, and that's east. So you can see part of the river like that, and that is something which we gotta do. And you know, this is what I gotta get doing on that. Always gotta be on that rock and roll, you know. So something which we got all the way to the top, man. All the go to the top, you know. That is something what we have to get doing, you know. Don't stay anymore. Yeah, so the DMAA, now I'm in the clear to discuss it. Yeah, $1 million for this rainbow. When you hear the alarms, I'm still hearing our brothers and sisters and the police. When you hear the alarm and the sirens, please slow down. Stop accelerating, slow down. If you hear the ambulance, if you hear the firefighters, if you hear the sirens, it's tough times. And I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, you know. I don't like violence, but I'm hyper vigilant, you know. I'm hyper vigilant, and I'm not afraid of gangsters. You know, I'm not afraid of gangsters personally. Some people are, but not me. Make sure you don't miss if you come against me. So we got tough times geopolitically, and when you hear, of course, the geopolitics, of course, that is something which we gotta go drilling on that, and drilling on the go, and drilling for now, and getting on that appellation of know to be, and to be consequentially prudently about, and to, of course, fully represent and fully strategize all the victims, of course, where we are now, to set it on that go, you know. Always something which we gotta get on that dribble and on the go now, you know, to discuss the DMA now clearly, because there's a lot of some noise there. So it's important for one to fully understand, you know, the DMAA, you know, in the particular, and you know, the particularities and the inclinations and the details and the possible, of course, reverberations where we are, of course, in all the situational complexes where we are now today, as the realities that. Look at a beautiful sunset. That because of the DMAA, DMA or A, action or assistance for action, have been undertaken by NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries within NATO, or the countries as a whole. That, of course, it was something which, of course, has to be fully understood, that this has potentially created the adversities and the hostilities, even internally, for people and citizens and groups who come from those potential areas, come from those non-NATO member countries, diasporas, members and fellow brothers and sisters who are diasporas from these communities from non-NATO member countries, who can, of course, in XYZ manners, be influenced by outside of NATO foreign governments, which, due to the DMAA undertaken by NATO in the past, have fomented transnational criminal organizations and groups to potentially, of course, harm us by mass fentanyl distribution and production, by riots, by undertaking, by hacking, by criminal nefarious activities, by nefarious criminal activities, of course, in such as the consequential where we, of course, are now today, So that is something which, of course, has to be fully understood and fully, of course, appellate where we are now in the relation with me willing to build with your help and the trillions of kisses created from the goddess, the forgotten goddess temple. As always, a God bless, goddess kiss our empire, the 63, and the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance in Action, has layers to it. I can give you an example. For example, direct military assistance and action undertaken in Iraq, Syria, Libya, even Yugoslavia, even Iraq, even by providing not action, but assistance in Ukraine. Ukraine not being part of NATO, we had potentially made enemies of Russia, and consequently by providing NATO member countries, providing assistance to Taiwan, the ROC, Republic of China is known as Taiwan, this has potentially created these adverse responsive military political alliances such as the Sino-Russia, Russia-China, solidifying and performing and doing drills. We're establishing and doing the biggest drills, joint drills they ever did. They never did joint drills before like that. And of course now they have even more joint drills, which of course they performed in the past 3.5 years. More joint drills, which of course they performed in the past 3.5 years. Potentially China has a potential to invade Taiwan, of course, because they still claim mainland China. That conflict still dates from an unresolved conflict from the 20th century, from a 20th century conflict, which of course has been not resolved ever since, and it has not been resolved as of the current moment in time, being that we are 28th of August 2025, right? So that is a measurement of DMAA. Again, that is, we provided military assistance by arms and weapon and munitions to Taiwan. So that is the possible consequence, is that due to this military assistance, DMAA, that's why those interests have been stated by this fact of just DMAA, direct military assistance or action. So it could be either or both. It could be both. Because NATO direct military involvement by providing, for example, F-16s, NATO planes bombarding in Libya or Syria during the ISIL crisis and the civil war, and of course in Iraq or Libya civil war. It's both assistance and action, right? Boots on the ground as well, XYZ. So direct military assistance or action or assistance, either or action or either assistance, either action or both, right? And of course that has several layers of potential consequences, of which these potential consequences can be that these groups where NATO had taken direct military action or assistance, that they cluster more together, they form strong, powerful military, political, financial, commercial, diplomatic alliances in response to this DMAA, and even to the point of taking covert action against NATO member countries, and even with the help of non-NATO aligned diaspora community members. And I've written a protocol theory thesis, a bit academic, scholarly in the past. I discussed it in my past videos of the past 4 or 5 years. I've been discussing these protocols, theories, and a bit academic, intellectual, philosophical. The need to the citizen integration, need of course for the mass public private partnership, citizen security, for the need, the initiative for the reconciliation with non-NATO member aligned diaspora communities for total internal domestic NATO security. Yes, I know it's an academic, scholarly title, but it has concrete action. So as it relates to those fellow citizens who come to join us from non-NATO member countries, which have been touched in a way by this DMAA, direct military assistance and action. Yes, it's a bit scholarly, academic, philosophical, but it has practical reverberations, and even, of course, to the point that, beautiful red, my favorite color, to the point that we are now open to potential sabotage, espionage, and even with the increase of growing transnational criminal and syndicate organized groups aligning themselves to this DMAA. So the Dragon Army functions as a proposition for internal North American, Canada, United States, SSD only, security, service, and defense principles that have been, of course, clarified on the point in time in B. And of course, as it relates to NATO as well, it can be expanded to NATO. So now it's going to be important for me to discuss, to switch from the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, to, of course, the other philosophy or the other initiative, theory which we need to implement, such as the DRT, the debt refusion theory. But before, we're just going to turn our heads left and right, cross, and I love a little bit of those clusters of flowers there, red and white. Love that red and white. White and red is a combination which I really LOVE. So I'm gonna give it some of that good loving. And what a great garden here. I wish I could give my anonymous sister the money to buy a house. Maybe not buy here, because I saw one perfect with by the river, by the water, by the river. But this red and white is just perfect. And there's a weeping willow there, and that would be perfect for. I saw, if I would have had the money, I would have gotten her that house right away. If I would have had the money, I would have gotten her that house right away. Storm clouds. There was some storms, lightning and thunder announced. I don't mind sunshine, clouds, storms, thunders. But now we're just gonna head back to the headquarters because I'm a bit hungry. Is that a hole there? That seems like a hole. That's slightly dangerous if there's children with smaller feet. So just as a citizen prudence, maybe be careful so that this doesn't go. Seems like a hole. Wow, quite interesting. It's related to that. Maybe we're gonna sink. Imagine all this kind of like sinks. I mean, we're on the mountain, so it's a possibility. Whoop, maybe. Do I feel it? Wow, maybe I'm sinking. Gonna run, you know. If I die, bear with me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey, a third of me up in the city of the pyramids near Cairo, and 1/3 of me at the back of the Montreal. There are send every 11 years, change where I live, change my possibility. I will to be embalmed, just like Jacob Israel. What a paradox, mystery of mysteries of mysteries paradox, that Jacob Israel, according to Genesis chapter 50, according to Genesis chapter 50, Israel, Jacob was actually embalmed in ancient Egypt, and that's quite a mystery there if you read the Bible, right? Israel, Jacob, so-called father of the 12 tribes, and the 13th one was actually beautiful. This makes me think of Napolitan ice cream. I just love this combination of 4 colors. It makes me think of course, the Napolitan ice cream. It's quite beautiful. Flowers and garden here we have, and houses too. Even those gardens are nice. Wish I could split. This number 6 would be good, considering all the 6s we got before. We're gonna add another 6. That's 6 for what street though? I wonder how much is evaluated this one. I'll be number 6. Oh, I see a blurred. Is that a 6? I'm gonna go close. I see the number blurred. So I was prescribed some glasses, but I'm not gonna afford the glasses for September because the government only covers a certain $120. So I'm gonna have to put $120 from my pocket. And yeah, it is a 6. Nice garden. Nice lights. Thank you, Hydro-Quebec. Beautiful flowers and beautiful lights. Beautiful lights and flowers. I love that rock and roll in the shower. So back to the DMAA, just going to finalize before I go into the DRT. So the direct military assistance or action is pertinent because it provides a theoretical, not just a theoretical framework, but a contentious point of potential action or suppression of continuing assistance or action in conflicts which are involved between non-NATO member countries. It could be A, B, C, D, right? So this is a grand also strategy. It implies a certain strategic evaluation, and from a point of strategy and the potential to be mindful of the potential consequences internally in NATO member countries. What that entails is relation to the fact that this DMAA has been undertaken for the past decades, especially since the fall of the Soviet Union, even in Europe, in Yugoslavian wars, right? The dissolution of Yugoslavia, which Tito, the socialist communist regime, which was Yugoslavia, which is a multinational affair, basically, a multinational. So was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but just the relevancy for the fact that NATO is a post-Second World War organization and which expanded, right? NATO expansion is another question of, but that expansion, this is a different framework for the actual expansion and the DMAA. There is truth that there is a value to NATO expand, that the taking into consideration the expansion of NATO when we deal with the DMA philosophy, theoretical framework and philosophy, because it's all of it, right? It's a philosophy, it's a theory, it's a framework, it's a strategy even. The DMAA, or the strategy may, if we are to think about and meditate, and NATO generals and our leaders meditate and think about the aspects and the consequential potentially adverse reaction and consequences for NATO member countries to engage in DMA, direct military assistance or action, or direct military action or assistance. So that is just something which we have, of course, to do. So that is just something which we have, of course, to do in the situation where we are, of course, to be expansive and intermission in all of our communicative aspects and keeping this marching, dancing manner. But of course, the reality is that it can, of course, potentially harm us in unintended consequences, unexpected consequences. So thus, of course, the DMAA can be a great point of reference for the future. And yes, of course, the expansion of NATO is a point of interest, and some of it is very, very much aligned with the DMAA, or is integrated, because the DMAA, if NATO expands to, let's say, 33 countries next year, another country joins, the DMAA is still going to be applicable, the philosophy. If it expands to 44, 40, then 44, or the DMAA, direct military assistance action, will still be of value, right? It's way right until NATO exists, until we have until we don't have NATO as we know it today, right? Which is a possibility, a fragmentation of a possibility. United States now, the vast military budgets increase due to the Ukraine being invaded, right? But there's a consequence that the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, that we had to increase the budget, and that's why in the past 3.5 years Ukraine was invaded February 24th, 2022. So it's been 3.5 years, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. So it's been exactly 3.5 years, exactly 44 months. It's been exactly 3.5 years, February, March, April, May, June, July, August 2022 or 2025. So exactly 3.5 years since the Russia-Ukrainian war, invasion, whatever. I'm not on the ground with 300 men and women to exactly evaluate the situation. So not being on the ground exactly to evaluate the situation fully, I cannot really make a dictum. But most of my strategies, philosophies, initiatives are for Canada, United States, such as the DRT, although they can be expanded for NATO, as in whether to take DMAA, for me, would be in the empire, we always have to have a referendum. We have to have a big popular vote, whether we take DMAA or not, vis-a-vis the Draconis complex. We always have to get the DMAA, a direct military assistance or action, consequently, as we would have to in the future, with the Imperial Republik being established, fusing Canada and United States, and our Draconis being the call for the creation of the Imperial integrated. I wish I could split 50-50. That's too big maybe for me and my anonymous friend. We got something a little smaller. So the DMAA, of course, is a potential consequence as we see the full moon. Not the full moon's coming, but we see the moon, but the moon's getting fuller. I meant to say correction. And I love these. These are so nice. So of course, the DMAA, as we has to be in the consequent future on a vote. So I would be to have a popular vote on it, because it has potential consequences. Explain certain consequences, internal, external, diaspora, non-NATO aligned member diaspora community groups, how that might foment certain tensions and even outright hostilities and criminality and terrorism. So those are possibilities. Terrorist acts can be due to this DMAA, direct military assistance and action. There's not just terrorism, there's drug use, tempering fentanyl so that it becomes deadly, and riots and fomenting all sorts of civil discord, all that. So all, of course, that situational awareness is where we are now today. So all of where we are now today, it is the consequential action or assistance vis-a-vis undertaking and engaging in DMAA, direct military assistance and action. So all that being set aside now, just meditate on it. We're going to discuss it. It requires it has more details. It has a lot of more depth to it. I just gave a brief scholarly, philosophical, academic framework of reference theory, but of course you have to understand it and perhaps explain it even further with further details. One of it more relevant is exactly what I mentioned. The Ukraine, we provided assistance. There was no direct military action, but there is direct military assistance, because we provided weaponry, we provided tanks, we provided guns, we provided artillery, we provided helmets, we provided munition, we provided uniforms, we provided those military elements, of which consequently, because we engaged in direct military assistance, not action, but assistance nonetheless, we made potentially an adverse, even more adversarial, negative, hostile enemy in Russia, enemy in Russia. And of course, potentially with the Taiwan situation, there might be even more problematic on that field, on that level, where we can, of course, have further negative adverse consequences in the future to certain events where we, as NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the military collective security alliance, what's known in geopolitics and international relations as collective security, might have those adverse reactions, those adverse problems, which could be consequently I mean, there's a variance. They're not all the same, but nonetheless, there are certain things which can potentially even be more damaging, such as terrorism. Terrorism. So terrorism, of course, terrorism and actions and criminality can be part of those. So now we're going to engage in the Now we're going to engage in descending. We're going to descend by that way and discuss the DRT. Give me a few seconds. So now we're going to discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory, before we switch to the French, because we are in La Belle Province. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, we have to discuss it now. It is the solution, or it is one of the solutions, the DRT, the debt refusion theory. Of course, it is pertinent, of course, to our collective security and North American civilizational complex, specifically for Canada, United States, because my debt refusion theory, the DRT, which integrates monetary integration theory, has to be, of course, implemented both in Canada and in the United States of America. Both countries, both citizens, and it is part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the North American collective for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the North American collective civilizational complex. And of course, it is the exquisite domain where we are going to implement it as one of the primary theories for the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, by fusing Canada and the United States into the perpetual Imperial Republic and Democratic Union via the implementation of the DRT and the creation of the Universal Exchange Unit. So we have four main problems. Both my brothers and sisters in Canada and my brothers and sisters in the USA, we are faced with four main problems: economic, financial, commercial problems. One of those problems is the growing cost of living. Everything is becoming more expensive. Everything is becoming more expensive. So being that everything is becoming more expensive, the price of milk, of butter, of cheese, of butter, of cheese, butter, cheese, and eggs and bacon is becoming more expensive. Cost of everyday living goods, the goods that we buy, even the beef, my wafers, the eggs, the milk, the coffee is also becoming more expensive. So the growing cost of living, and these four problems, economic, social, financial problems, you can place them in whatever order. They vary from individual sovereign citizens to another. But generally they are these four. So the growing cost of living, the growing cost of rents. Even my rent went up, but I'm not going to complain because I think that my rent going up by XYZ amount, I'm just going to make the statement that my rent went up between $6 and $10. So 6 minimum or 10 maximum, or anywhere in between. My rent went up between a minimum, I'm going to say the range between 6, but it could be by 6, and maximum 10, or it could be 10, or anywhere in between 6 and 10. So suffice it to say that I'm not going to complain because, of course, I find it fair in my case. So the growing cost of living, prices are increasing of many goods, growing cost of rent, the stagnation of the salaries. The salaries are stagnating, right? The salaries are stagnating. The fourth one, and whatever they put on, the growing credit card debt. People are getting more and more in debt. They're swishing. They're buying and selling, and of course, even now somebody's getting in debt across the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3 from Montreal to LA. We still got that time zones, although it's beginning sunset now. We're getting towards that sunset. Sunset has begun, and the Sabbath begins at midnight. So due to those four problems, we have to, it's an emergency. We can have a financial economic crash before September 11, maybe the September financial economic crash, maybe October 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, Halloween crash. We could have a financial economic catastrophe because the prices are going up, the rents have increased, the stagnation of the salaries, and there's even difficulty, even for me, including himself, which has been for years and years and years, to maintain jobs, not getting necessarily, but maintain long term. But now it seems this past 3.5 years has been increasingly difficult for Gen Zs, and millennials such as myself to get a job. I hear horror stories, people applying for every week and getting a call back and no response and no follow-ups, and all that is kind of consequentially and of course informative in all the appellations where we have, of course, to construe and to, of course, understand all the situations where we have now to be living in all the mandates where we are, to know the position where we are in the aspect of the daily life and affirming all our life affirmative capabilities once we are, of course, to be on the dot side of implementing my DRT theory as a solution. I always say as the only solution, but it's not necessarily the only solution, but of course, as in principle, of course, the solution is, in theory, in the theoretical framework, in the solution that it is the only solution, not necessarily, but the solution has to resemble the principles embedded, integrated, or manifested by the debt refusion theory. Manifesting in the debt refusion theory, the DRT, which includes monetary integration theory, So of course, I'm gonna now discuss it. So monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. The Europeans, in the 90s, they destroyed their national central banks. They no longer have national central banks in Europe. They have the ECB, the European Central Bank, which is a multinational central bank. It's a multinational central bank, right? It's a multinational central bank, It's a multinational central bank. It's not a central bank in the sense because the Europeans basically they destroyed their national central banks. They annulled Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, and other countries. They destroyed their national central banks and national currencies. This is nice here. Beautiful, kind of dark. It's kind of a purple, eh? It's kind of a purple and mixed. It's very beautiful. Good job here. Public workers, go, go, go. So in the 90s, they created a multinational central bank. They no longer have like we have in Canada. The Bank of Canada, Federal Reserve in the USA functions as a national central bank. Another, the Bank of China, Bank of Israel. Many other countries have, respectively, national central banks, right? No longer does the European Union have national central banks. So keep that in mind, it's super important. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt. So now I'm going to explain the DRT, debt refusion. Just keep in mind that integrated in the DRT is integrated the MIT monetary integration theory, which is a theory which the Europeans implemented in the 90s, long ago, more than 25 years ago. And interestingly enough, I was speaking about the ECB, the European Central Bank. I think the headquarters in Brussels, I think it kind of looks like this. The headquarters of the European Central Bank, which issues the euro as a multinational, because like I said, they destroyed their national central banks. Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, many countries, they no longer have national central banks. It's the only union which the countries have adopted, that they have the ECB. The European Central Bank is a central bank for many countries, right? They don't have like the Federal Reserve in the United States anymore since the 90s, like the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, right? The Bank of China, right? The Bank of Russia, Bank of Israel. They don't have central banks in that way. And I believe it kind of resembles kind of this building, the ECB, interestingly enough, because I was discussing it. So now we're going to expand the DRT theory. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, my $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That's how we're going to take we're going to do an addition, add all the debt, public and private debt together, including my $10,000 to the RBC. We're going to add it all up. And of course, all that, we're going to add it together, do an addition with the public-private debt of the United States of America, the United States of America, USA debt. And all that money, our debt, their debt, is going to, of course, be the creation of this new central bank, or the creation of this new central bank, of this new central bank, of this new central bank, of this new central bank. So that is just going to be added all up. So all the public-private debt of Canada, United States, add that debt up. That's going to be the initial money supply plus the other money that exists in circulation. We're going to create a new central bank, the Imperial Republican Bank, and we're going to issue a new currency called the UE, based on the value of the US dollar. The UE, U dot universal, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The UE, the universal exchange unit, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, UE. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. It's going to have the value of the US dollar. It's going to have the value of the US dollar, right? The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. It's going to have the value of the US dollar. The universal exchange unit. So that is what is going to have, to do with that. And that's just what we're going to do. The UE, the universal exchange unit. The UE for Canada and United States. With this new implementation of this theory, we're gonna do lots of good. We're gonna get rid of the border. We're gonna do a great census, see who's been living here since 2017, in the past 7 years, let's say, or since COVID, past 5-7 years. See, we can give some amnesty, give Imperial citizenship, because we're gonna fuse the 10, the 50, and the 3 into the Imperial 63. We're gonna get rid of the border. We're gonna rebuild the infrastructure, do a mass infrastructure rebuilding plan, put lots of people to work. We're going to mass finance work. We're going to do the criminal rehabilitation of the Empire, Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act for my brothers and sisters to help build the 44 subterranean cities and tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war for the continuity of the survival of our Imperial complex. We're going to get rid of the border, do a great census. So we're going to do a great Imperial census, see everybody who's been living here, and we can give some amnesty. If you have been convicted of 44 criminal convictions, if you have been convicted of 44 criminal convictions, 44 criminal convictions, then maybe not. We have to discern, right? We have to discern. So it will require some discernment for sure. The discernment is going to be relevant, of course. Discernment is going to be relevant. So we're going to see, turn your heads left or right when you cross the street, and we're going to discern. So we're going to do this discernment apropos vis-a-vis, and we're going to discern, and we're going to create this new central bank, right? This new central bank, which is going to have the value, we're going to put into circulation the universal exchange rate, the universal exchange rate, the UE, we're going to put into value the universal exchange rate, the universal exchange rate is going to have the value of the US dollar, The universal exchange rate is going to have the value of the US dollar. With this, implementing the DRT is going to propel us into new imperial financial reality, and we're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. 10% is going to be maximum thereafter. We're going to mass rebuild the infrastructure, mass build more hydroelectric dams, build those 44 subterranean tunnel cities to be able to safeguard millions, especially of the youth, the young, from our empire, coming Imperial Perpetual Union of the 63. We're going to finance fitness. We're going to do that census, create a common Imperial passport. We're going to create the common Imperial passport. And of course, we're going to finance tourism, of course, the tourism project. We're going to build more hydroelectric dams, get into the great golden dome. We're going to put a hawk in it. We're going to implement my TMDT, Total Mobile Defense Theory, which of course I cannot discuss too much. The TMDT, Total Mobile Defense Theory, part of Operation Northern Scorpio, because when the TMDT, the Total Mobile Defense Theory, becomes a system, that means that we implemented and we're putting it into action. But due to being binational, nationally, Canada, United States, binational security matters, I can only discuss it with Chiefs David McGinty and chief high-ranking security officers like the high-ranking officers of the FBI, RCMP, CIA, NSA, CSIS, David McGinty, Pam Bondi, Pig Hexet, and of course Tulsi Gabbard, and that's that rock and roll. So I'm not gonna. I discuss it a bit, but generally I don't discuss it much because it's binational security sensitive. I'm putting this as on the public sphere, on the public domain, the internet. So the TMDT, Total Mobile Defense Theory, when we implement it to become a system, it becomes a system implementing it. I'm not going to discuss it much, but with the DRT, the debt refusion theory, we're going to be able also to establish a mass imperial tourism. We're going to have 4 ministries. We're going to fuse Canada and United States. We're going to have 4 main ministries: Ministry of Love, we're going to have Ministry of Safety, Security and Defense. We're going to have the Ministry of this Imperial Citizen Wellness. We're going to have the Imperial Ministry of 4 ministries, which are going to have to be in those 4 ministries, everything that our empire will do, socially, economically, monetarily, at all levels, is going to be integrated in it. And we're going to even finance citizens. We're going to accord all citizens of the empire who are 16 years, when you turn 16, every season, because we're going to have 4 seasons across the empire. We have in Montreal spring, summer, autumn, and of course winter, 4 seasons, 4 days every season, which we're going to accord for citizens to be, of course, accorded food, housing, and transport. Transport, food, and housing of the choice. Of course, you're not going to maybe eat, of course, caviar, but you're going to have, of course, a certain level where, of course, you're going to have a certain food allocated and transit allocated, and of course, hospitality, and of course, you're going to have, when you're 16, citizens are going to have 4 days, 4 days, every 3 months. And 4 times 4 a year is going to be 16 days where a citizen can go anywhere across the 63. It's recommended that you change each time. And of course, each time is changed, that you change it. And of course, and you have to get on that changing on the go. So of course, you're going to have until you get 44 maximum. After 44 is going to be a maximum. So you have basically 44 divided by 4. It's 11. So 11 seasons, because when you accumulate 44 days, you're of course going to be encouraged to use the days. So it's kind of use them or lose them, and it revamps the system. But you can accumulate it at the end of the year. You can just go once a year or twice a year, 8 days, or once a year, 16 days. You go, you say, I'm going to visit a few states, but you have 4 nights of lodging. 4 nights, but which includes, of course, the transportation. If you choose to not go by plane, you can go by train, but that, of course, automatically is going to be an allotment, and you're going to have to just maybe have 2 nights, depending on the duration. Because, of course, you can leave in the morning, but once in the morning from a.m., and then after it passes midnight, you get the 4 full nights, 4 midnights basically. So it's going to be a system like that, and this is going to be great for recreation, for establishing a strong esprit de corps. It is recommended that, for example, if you live here in Quebec, you go to another, say you have 62, because it's 63, 10, 50, and 3. We're going to constitute 63 Imperial states, and of course, it's recommended that each time you visit another state, so in a full circle about, in 4 years, basically, you can visit all the 63. In 3.5 years, actually, you can visit all the 63 if you think about it, because you can get 4 days, and every season you can see, so you can see basically different states. If you take train, you can cross the states, right, to go to another state. If you take it by bus, you can cross the strait, but it depends. If you sleep on the plane, if you sleep on the train, or sleep on the bus, that is considered a day. Right, that is considered a day, a night. Once you pass so you leave in the morning. If it's by plane, it's only a few hours. In any state, 63 states, it's only going to be hours, right? If it's quantifiable, if it's by train or by bus, of course, by transportation by bus, it's longer. So once you pass the night, you kind of passed 1 day, and you go 1 night is 4 nights basically. So if you go by, of course, by the plane, you have 4 nights where you can spend, of course, 4 nights. So those 4 nights can be spent anywhere in the empire, basically. And the travel, the hotels, motels, and food, transport, and shelter. So the lodging in a hotel or motel will be covered by the Imperial's grace, at the Imperial behalf of the empire, for the empire. Of course, and you can go in any state, California, Quebec, you can go from Quebec to California, anywhere across the 63, Yukon, Northwest Territories, in the north, of course, any other state, you can go across the 63. So that's going to be established and covered at the cost of the empire. Once you turn 16, anybody who has turned 16 on that season, the season ends at the end of, it's actually at the equinox. So at every equinox, so basically March 20th, June 20th, right? Then you got September 20th, then you have December 22nd, 21st, 20, it's all the 20th, the 22nd. So the 21st, 22nd, 20, so that's when the equinox kind of switches, right? So when that occurs, one is credited automatically 4 days a citizen, right? So, you have accumulation, and you can take it. But of course, it's kind of going to have a system first come first serve, because otherwise if everybody takes it at the same time, then right away when it kicks in. But we're going to have the 4 weeks that it kicks in every other week. So we're going to have by age and by dates of birth. By dates of birth, there's going to be a system, that has some details, so that we don't stop everything for 4 days. For 4 days, on those. It could be even a system where we stop for 4 days every season, every 3 months, where that is what's going on, just traveling. It could be that system also, right? So basically it could be that system, although I think the other system is more feasible. I guess we're going to have some consultation, but generally that's what is going to be happening. So we're going to mass finance tourism. Imperial tourism is going to be financed at the behest, the graces of our coming empire. But if we have, the 4 days, let's say on the equinox, on the equinox, I guess it's gonna have 2 weeks because we're gonna have those who serve in the Dragon Army, the security apparatus, to have that or not. So, yeah, we have to do that. So now, French, because we're in la belle province, pledge your allegiance, friends with benefits only, support the DRT. We're gonna do mass good, mass finance, do that great census, and get rid of the border, fuse the FBI and the RCMP. We're gonna fuse the FBI and RCMP, or we're gonna create complementary covenant cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Security Service and Defense, SSD Legion with the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Dancing Goddess Army, which of course has to be conjugal and has to be, of course, point in reference where we have, of course, to make it in the verbosities, of course, where we are, to integrate all the domains where we are, of course, confluential about, and we have to do it. So the Dragon Army, Imperial Integrated Dance League, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, SSD, Security Service and Defense, get that cadence, and Dragon Army with the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the DGA, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, pledge your allegiance, our family, And now French, because we're in la belle province, go truckers, go bakers, go nurses, go firefighters, go plumbers, go electricians. Gotta send some of that LOV so that our empire might be 93. Et Québécois et Québécoises, une marche avant le sabbat. Et vendredi, je suis joyeux, financièrement, mais je suis stressé, mais merci pour... J'ai pas reçu beaucoup pour le mois de septembre, mais je vais être capable de payer, bien sûr, mon loyer. J'ai déjà payé l'Hydro-Québec pour le mois de septembre, 72 $. Puis je vais être capable, bien sûr, de payer mon téléphone, soit dimanche ou lundi. Fait qu'à part ça, bien, c'est sûr que je vais rentrer encore dans un petit stress financièrement. Je vais être encore un peu stressé, là, fait que ça va être un petit stress qui va se rajouter à celle-là, mais c'est quand même quelque chose que je vais pouvoir tolérer, mais parce que j'ai déjà toléré le mois passé, puis bien des années, bien sûr. Vous savez que moi, mais à cause de la condition neurologique laquelle je vis avec, l'Asperger's, l'autisme hautement fonctionnel, puis sachez qu'il y a la moitié des aspis n'ont pas de diagnostic officiel, même si moi, quand même, ça fait 8-9 ans, ça fait plusieurs années qu'on me l'avait dit, puis c'est des citoyens et citoyennes que j'ai rencontrés, puis qui ont de l'expérience dans le domaine de la santé, puis j'ai jamais voulu accepter ça, parce que, tu sais, c'est comme un stigme, c'est oui, il y a encore du travail à faire vis-à-vis l'Asperger's, mais c'est sûr, c'est mieux que c'était auparavant. Dans le 20e siècle, il y a bien plus de progrès qui a été fait au 21e siècle vis-à-vis l'Asperger's et vis-à-vis qu'est-ce que c'est l'Asperger's et qu'est-ce que c'est pas l'Asperger's. L'autisme hautement fonctionnel, j'utilise les deux, puis il faut commencer par dire que c'est pas une maladie. L'Asperger's, ce n'est pas une maladie, c'est pas une maladie, je suis pas une maladie, puis je dois vivre avec, il n'y a pas de médicaments. La cause de qu'est-ce qui cause l'Asperger's, c'est quand même quelque chose entre l'hérédité, soit génétique, biologique, ou c'est quelque chose qui a à faire avec les gènes, l'hérédité, ou c'est quelque chose qui a à faire, bien sûr, avec les gènes ou l'hérédité dans ce point de conséquence d'avoir que c'est vis-à-vis les gènes ou l'hérédité, ou bien sûr que c'est génétique. Tu sais que c'est génétique. Bien, c'est sûr que il n'y a pas de conclusion. Fait qu'on on ne peut pas donner des médicaments, bien sûr. Il n'y a pas de médicaments à donner. On doit toujours faire la gestion, bien sûr, pour le faire. Il faut avoir la gestion, bien sûr, dans le domaine de la gestion, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, pour le faire de la manière, bien sûr, qu'on a à faire dans le point de vue des conséquences, bien sûr, puis des caractéristiques, puis des traits, parce que c'est pas des symptômes, hein. C'est pas des symptômes, c'est pas une maladie, c'est comme des caractéristiques que je dois vivre avec. Par exemple, tu sais, qu'est-ce qui est plus difficile, c'est le social, la manière qu'on parle, qu'on s'exprime, la communication, des fois non verbale aussi, ça peut être difficile. Puis On a les intérêts spéciaux, je connais comme obsessif, mais ça ne sert à rien que moi j'utilise obsessif, car obsessif, c'est plus pour un neurotypique. Puis vous, vous les neurotypiques, vous êtes à 99%. Fait que la majorité de la population, c'est vous êtes des neurotypiques. Fait que la majorité de la population, bien sûr, en étant que vous êtes des neurotypiques, dans ce point de convergence, bien sûr, qu'on est rendu, bien sûr, à être puis à vivre, les neurotypiques, bien sûr, vous constituez la majorité des citoyens puis des citoyennes. Et nous, bien sûr, on constitue une petite minorité. Il n'y a pas bien des Aspergers dans le monde. Puis même que la population est de 0,44%, fait que c'est moins d'1%. Puis ça, c'est 50% qui sont diagnostiqués. Fait que ça veut dire qu'il y a le double. Parce que si 50%, c'est la moitié, donc 0,44 fois 2, ça fait 0,88. Fait que même là, même si on aurait tous les aspects qui sont diagnostiqués, puis présentement, c'est à peu près la moitié. Donc, c'est même pas 1%. Fait qu'il y a même des gens qui ne savent même pas c'est quoi l'Asperger's, aussi connu comme l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. Donc, je suis moi-même atteint. C'est un syndrome, ça caractérise par certains ça peut être étrange, ça peut être bizarre, la manière qu'on communique. Et bien sûr, la difficulté de la compréhension des lois non écrites sociales, mettons, l'espace personnel, on a tendance de briser ça, de s'approcher trop proche de la personne de 2-3 pouces. C'est sûr que ça peut produire une inquiétude. Quelqu'un peut s'alarmer, quelqu'un peut dire, je me sens un peu insécure ou des choses comme ça. Puis moi, toujours, je dois travailler sur ces caractéristiques parce que je dois remercier aussi à mon ami anonyme qui m'a donné 2 livres sur l'autisme, mais ça a des chapitres sur l'Asperger's parce que ça a été intégré en 2013-2014. Puis un livre en particulier qui m'a été loué 4 fois parce que c'était près de la bibliothèque. Ça s'appelle en anglais « Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome ». Pour faire la traduction mot à mot, c'est « Apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger's ». Apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger's. Fait que apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger's, c'est un livre que je conseille à ceux qui sont atteints par l'Asperger's, aussi bien sûr ceux qui veulent connaître plus ou qui ont dans leur famille ou à l'entourage jeunesse. Puis nous, on a quand même des problèmes vis-à-vis les amis. On n'a pas beaucoup d'amis, puis on a de la misère à garder des amis parce qu'on a comme une routine rituelle, puis des intérêts, puis on peut être intense, concentré dans certaines choses, puis on ne sait pas vraiment quand la personne a un intérêt vis-à-vis le même intérêt que nous. Fait que nous, il faut nous le dire toujours, s'il te plaît, je suis pas intéressé, puis that's it. Comme ça marche des fois avec l'Asperger's, les Aspis, les autistes hautement fonctionnels. Fait que ça peut être un peu de même que ça fonctionne, vous comprenez? Fait que même nous, on peut être direct. On peut dire direct des choses, puis on peut offenser, on peut causer une offense, on peut être direct dans la conversation communique. Là. Fait que ça peut nuire dans ces choses-là, mais c'est pas parce qu'on a la volonté, c'est la manière qu'on est des fois. On est direct, puis on dit les choses comme direct, là, puis sans vouloir offenser, on peut offenser les gens, les concitoyens, tu sais. C'est quelque chose qui peut quand même arriver assez souvent. Puis le problème, c'est qu'on manque pas juste d'amis, mais on est souvent en dépression, puis on vit souvent, plus que vous, les neurotypiques, pour les Asperger's, c'est 9 fois plus d'Aspis qui vivent la dépression puis le suicide. Moi-même, je l'ai vécu. La dépression puis le suicide, je pensais que j'allais enlever ma vie. La dépression puis le suicide. Puis sans l'emploi, c'est difficile. Garder l'emploi à long terme. Moi, j'ai eu bien des emplois que j'ai aimés de 4 mois, 3 mois, 2 mois, 3 mois, une couple de semaines, 4 mois, mais c'est ça le problème, c'est les Asperger's, parce qu'on ne socialise pas de la même manière. Fait que certaines choses, les neurotypiques, vous, avec lesquels on doit bâtir les ponts, des petits ponts, des moyens ponts, des ponts larges ou extra larges. Je fais une parallèle de caractéristiques comme si vous commandez un café, là, mais c'est sûr que ça peut varier un peu, là, mais c'est à peu près ces 4 catégories de largesse, de grandeur, de ponts qu'il faut bâtir avec. Fait qu'on bâtit ou non ces ponts-là, il faut les bâtir parce que moi, j'ai pas d'antagonisme. Hein. J'aime pas la violence moi-même. J'ai été attaqué par surprise. J'ai survécu à une attaque vicieuse par surprise dans une couple d'années dans le métro de Montréal. J'étais tout ensanglé, j'ai cogné ma tête, j'avais le bras disloqué, puis il faudrait que j'aille vérifier, bien sûr, voir à l'hôpital juif, bien sûr, à l'hôpital juif, bien sûr. Et bien sûr, c'est ce point de convergence, lequel qu'on vit, est dans cette point où on s'adresse, bien sûr, maintenant, c'est que j'ai survécu ça, puis je vis avec mes cicatrices, mes trompes. Puis, bien sûr, la population, bien sûr, ça fait bien sûr dans cette affaire, bien sûr, qu'il faut qu'on aille, bien sûr, dans ce domaine de l'affaire de la sécurité, bien sûr. Puis c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, qu'il faut qu'on s'adresse dans ce point de convergence, de vivre ici avec où qu'on est rendu maintenant à vivre, puis à bâtir ces ponts-là de compréhension, parce que moi, j'ai pas besoin de beaucoup de soutien personnellement. Il y en a des Asperger ou des autistes qui ont plus de besoin de soutien que moi. Moi, j'ai vécu la dépression, j'étais en dépression suicidaire. Maintenant, mon seul stress, c'est financier, économique. Puis j'ai commencé à m'entraîner après que j'ai traversé le Canada. Je célèbre 8 ans dans cette année, là. C'est en août. Je suis allé à Vancouver, en Colombie-Britannique, puis en septembre, je suis allé à Nouvelle-Écosse, à Halifax. Cet événement, traverser le Canada, ça m'a fait ouvrir les yeux. J'ai eu comme une révélation, puis cette révélation, mais ça m'a fait bien sûr, ça m'a fait que j'ai ouvert les yeux, ça m'a fait ouvrir les yeux bien sûr dans cette théorie, puis dans cette parallèle, pour qu'on soit bien sûr dans cet événement, bien sûr, pour avoir dans ce point de convergence où qu'on peut bien sûr faire de cette manière, d'avoir bien sûr dans ce point où qu'on se libère maintenant, puis qu'on vit bien sûr de la conséquence de l'Asperger vis-à-vis de la perte d'emploi, tu sais, parce que c'est à 80%, là, les statistiques, là, c'est 80%, là, c'est inacceptable, imaginez-vous, là, c'est 4 sur 5, là, c'est beaucoup, là, c'est 8 sur 10, 80% bien sûr des Aspergers, bien sûr, n'ont pas bien sûr d'emploi, 80 plus, où on a de la misère à les garder, fait qu'il faut bâtir ces ponts-là. Moi, j'ai pas de sentiment antagoniste, tu sais. J'ai pas de sentiment antagoniste vis-à-vis vous les neurodivergents. Tu sais. J'ai pas ça dans ma vie, j'ai pas ça. Puis je suis quelqu'un qui n'aime pas la violence, je suis intense, je m'entraîne, je fais l'entraînement physique, le rock'n'roll, ben, je vis libre hein, depuis des années, je fais partie aussi de la communauté LGBTQ, je suis androgyne pansexuel, puis vous avez 18 ans, vous êtes mon ami avec bénéfice seulement, je ne veux pas perdre votre temps, c'est ça la solution pour moi, pour le manque d'amis, tu sais, pour des amis avec bénéfice, je suis monsieur, madame, homme, femme, je me cache pas, c'est 50-50, je suis centriste, mon centrisme révolutionnaire, c'est pour la théorie de la refusion de la dette, puis c'est la géopolitique qui a mon intérêt spécial, puis je prends beaucoup de fierté dans mon travail indépendant en géopolitique, vis-à-vis aussi que j'ai la preuve pour ce que je vais faire de mention, pour faire une déclaration maintenant, que j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en 2019. J'ai la preuve, j'ai la vidéo en ligne. En 2019, j'ai prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale du niveau mondial, mais ça passe comment? De manière générale, tu sais, comment moi-même je l'ai prévu. Fait que de cette manière générale là, que moi j'ai prévu, tourner votre tête de la gauche à la droite quand vous traversez, de cette manière générale que j'ai prévu une conflagration internationale, puis j'ai la solution, soit la théorie impériale pour la République démocratique, la fusion du Canada dans un complexe pour la sécurité, service total, l'intégration de notre force, puis c'est fondamentalement un partenariat public-privé que je fais appel pour que mes théories soient la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette pour la création de l'unité d'universel, unité d'échange universel, UI, U point, E point, échange, U point, unité, E point, échange, U point, universel, UI. En anglais, c'est pareil, donc on ne s'abstiendra pas. L'unité d'échange universel soit de conséquences créées pour établir un nouvel ordre mondial dans le point de la géopolitique par la création de cette unité d'échange universel, fusionnant le Canada et les États-Unis en faisant un partenariat public-privé, puis le financement, bien sûr, des citoyens et citoyennes dans l'entraînement physique par un partenariat public-privé intégré à toutes les organisations, les institutions qui existent en ce moment, bien sûr, et financer, bien sûr, le tourisme par conséquence dans ce point de manière pour la réhabilitation, bien sûr, dans ce point de domaine, pour le faire, bien sûr, dans ce point de vivre ensemble ici. Donc, je vous encourage à l'entraînement physique, puis je vous fais appel à tous et toutes en tant que philosophe, artiste, et bien sûr, l'analyste théoricien en géopolitique pour, bien sûr, faire une évaluation aussi de ma TRD, pas seulement de celle-là, mais des mes autres philosophies et théories. Protégeance Légion, vous êtes famille, une salutation, le sabbat commence à soir du royaume de la dragon et de la